This episode of Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Coinbase. Cryptocurrency might feel like a secret or exclusive club, but Coinbase believes that everyone, everywhere, should be able to get in the door. Whether you've been trading for years or just getting started, Coinbase can help. Now, I don't consider myself any kind of expert or crypto bro or anything like that, but I do consider myself, let's just say, crypto curious. And if you've thought about entering the world of cryptocurrency, but maybe felt a little overwhelmed, Coinbase has made it really easy for me to check it out and buy and sell with ease. Coinbase offers a trusted and easy-to-use platform to buy, sell, and spend cryptocurrency. And for a limited time, new users can get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up today at coinbase.com/sacred. Sign up at coinbase.com/sacred for $10 in free Bitcoin. The offer's only for a limited time, so be sure to sign up today. That's coinbase.com/sacred.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 192. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined this week once again by Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you, my friend?
Hello, I'm good. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm playing so much right now. It's insane.
Yeah.
Feel borderline overwhelmed by it, but in a good way, because all of it's good. So
yeah, it's a good time to be a gamer.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a just month, honestly.
Sure. Well, it's good to see you. You're all geared up. This looks like a Sacred Symbols commercial if you're watching the video version, which some of you do on YouTube. He's wearing the old sweatshirt. We'll have our new merch very soon, by the way. We'll have more to say about that, I think, in the coming weeks. I don't know for sure. I think that's right. Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media. Is that right?
Well, stuff is ordered and we're waiting for it to come in, and it should be, there's no shipping delays or what's the word I'm looking for? Supply problems. So once we have it in, then we just got to get the photos and stuff like that. So it's hard to say exactly. It won't be too long now, though, I would say overall. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I was, it was kind of like a not so ideal morning, bunch of running around, and I ended up Holly took a shower before me and there was no cold water, and I was kind of grumpy about it. And I'm like, well, at least, I'm alive, I'm healthy, and my country's not being invaded.
Yeah.
Kind of had to check myself for a moment there. And I was like, I can deal with a little cold shower water. It's not going to kill me. But, so yeah, I think in that context, I'm very well.
I don't like this. I've said this before, maybe on this show, but certainly have said it elsewhere, is that I don't like the first world mentality thing. Just because bad things happen in the world, and they're always happening in the world, and we can condemn those things, doesn't mean you shouldn't have an expectation of your own life being as good as you expect it to be. Yeah. Because I used to, it's funny you say this, and we'll get into the whole thing that's happening in Russia later, because it has to do with video games, believe it or not, at least a little bit. But when I was younger, I used to think about, I was obsessed with World War II when I was a kid, surprisingly. And I was always thinking, after Band of Brothers, the HBO series from about 20 years ago, I was just maybe 22 years ago now, I was just enamored with it. And I was thinking of these dudes in the German forests and in Benelux, going and fighting the Nazis, and they're just in the shit, and it's winter and they have nothing, and Battle of the Bulge. And I used to think about that too. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so cold walking to school or something with these. But it's okay to have your own expectations of things going well as well.
On the flip side, though, they say that in order to live a happier life, you have to take appreciation for what you do have. So that's kind of the way I view it, is that sure, I think that, having a little bit of lukewarm shower water is beyond even the first world for something to complain about. That's a little extreme. But that's what I try to, I don't know, maybe it's something as I get older and I realize that, time is precious, lives are precious, whatever. It's probably getting more and more to be an unhealthy obsession, thinking about you better enjoy this now because one day it won't be there.
You're in a heady space right now, man. You're reading some Kant or something. I don't know what's going on with you. but it's very interesting to see you.
It feels like everybody's in a dire spot. I joined
No, I
the call like, man, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about video games. And all of a sudden it's like, man, I don't know how long things are going to be around for, man.
Well, no, I'd say that my overall point though is because I feel like because I take time to acknowledge and appreciate the things in my life, it does make me feel happier overall. Because the alternative is just not so pleasant. So
Misery.
yes,
It's like some mixture between Immanuel Kant and Marianne Williamson or something. Well, I'm glad that you're well. I'm glad that you're here. Chris, just to check in on you. I mean, shower situation okay with you?
Yeah, I got hot water because I don't live in a fucking swamp.
Damn.
You know,
Yeah.
or nothing.
Yeah. I got one of those hot water, like those newer hot water heaters that take a longer period of time to come to, but then you can just have hot water like in perpetuity as long as you keep it on. So it's so nice. So you just gotta be a little patient. Gotta be a little patient. But then it comes to, anyway, this is a PlayStation podcast, Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you so much for being here with us. You can get it 3 days early and ad free. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your support over there. Early ad-free access to every episode of the show, access to 2 episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus a week, which is our supplemental podcast. That's basically just as much content only on Patreon that is available to all the freeloaders and scallywags and lobsterbacks out there. So come join us. Recent episodes about fighting games. Awesome episode, actually, I did with Vincent Janito. About 90-minute long episode about Street Fighter and SNK and Arc System Works, or ArcSys, as they call them in the fighting game community. Troy Levitt did an interview with him, did a really awesome interview about China with what I would consider a new friend, Sale Lilly from the RAND Corporation. He put me on to a Saudi Arabian expert, and he's coming on in the coming weeks to talk about Saudi Arabia's economy, specifically with the acquisition of SNK by Fisk, owned by the Saudi royal family, and the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia buying pieces of Nikon and, more importantly, Capcom. So we're going to be talking about that in the coming weeks on Sacred Symbols Plus as well. I have an episode in the can. I don't know when it'll go live, but I talked to someone that worked at Sony QA for years, and it's really interesting insight into how that all works. And I'm trying to, and we're going to talk about it in a moment, but I'm trying to get a few episodes going about, I've reached out to the guys at Kotaku about the labor situation, and actually I've been in some interaction with them, hoping to have them on, whatever the case might be. But anyway, Sacred Symbols Plus is buzzing. Thank you so much for that. Come join us over there, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Also, Sacred Symbols 200 live in Richmond at the National, Saturday, April 30th. Live show, Chris's podcast, comedy podcast, the Snark Tank opening, and then we're going to talk about the top 25 PlayStation 4 games. Some people accuse me of trying to leverage the 3/5 compromise on you guys.
Oh shit!
I was like, I don't know if that's
how you know
an
it's
appropriate.
serious.
I don't know if that's an appropriate reference.
Oh my god!
Oh my god.
With how we vote on things here, but we're gonna vote. The audience is gonna vote. I'm gonna vote. Dustin's gonna vote. Chris is gonna vote. All of those are gonna count equally. Then we're gonna have a list that none of us will know, and we'll reveal that list live, and go over it all. Have a lot of audience interaction, a good time. There's gonna be bars. There's gonna be merch. There's going to be a lot of things. 50 VIPs. We're looking forward to meeting you guys. So thank you. Come tinyurl.com/sacred200. Tickets are available right now. tinyurl.com/sacred200. Come hang out in Richmond, Virginia, and make a weekend out of it. Beautiful city. Lots of history here in Virginia. If you like your Revolutionary War history, if you like your Civil War history, if you want to go see there's literally something called the Stonewall Jackson Shrine when you drive in Northern Virginia, and it used to be like a sign on the highway, and eventually I think we got to take that down.
It's a shrine?
Yeah, literally it says, it used to be like next stop, Stonewall Jackson Shrine. And people that have driven on I-95 will know exactly what I'm talking about. But then a couple of years ago, they're like, I think we got to get rid of that sign.
It's got to give you like a debuff or something, right?
Oh my, exactly. Stonewall Jackson died during the Civil War, of course. Deserved it. All right. Daniel the Awesome wrote into us on Patreon. Of course, if you support us on Patreon, one of the perks over there is you can submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show. He says, hello, Sacred Sim Boys. During the discussion on David Jaffe's hypothetical, and we were talking about last week about David Jaffe's, I think, ill-timed tweet, ill-themed tweet about gunning people of color or gay people down in a nightclub for a trophy. Nonetheless, he was asking a philosophical question. We went into all of that. He says, Colin said that Sony would never allow such a trophy to exist. However, such a trophy does exist, sort of. 2011's Call of Juarez the Cartel has a trophy called the Bad Guy. In a mission called Gang Bang, you get a trophy for killing 40 enemies. It's the only level in the game where all the enemies are black, and it's the only trophy tied to a number of kills in a mission. So while the trophy doesn't specifically tell you to kill minorities, you do have to kill a specific minority to get the trophy and thus the platinum. Just wanted to share, keep making Fridays great. It's a tenuous connection at best. In fact,
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, so Call of Juarez, made in Poland by Techland. Shout out to Techland. They have certainly have a different racial ear than we do in Eastern Europe. That sounds borderline racist to call the trophy Bad Guy on a mission called Gang Bang, in which you have to kill apparently black people. But I'm going to say that that's not quite what we're talking about here. You know what I wanted to talk about, guys? Do you remember when God of War Ascension came out? And there was a trophy. Do you know what I'm talking about, Chris?
I do know what you're talking about. I feel like I remember Adam Sessler doing a whole thing about it.
Yeah. I'm God of War Ascension, Adam Sessler.
It was Bros Before Hoes, right? It was like something like that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's the trophy was called Bros Before Hoes, and they actually went in and changed the name of it because Adam Sessler complained about it. And it says Escape the Fury Ambush. Escape the Fury Ambush is the trophy, and Bros Before Hoes was the name of it. So there's been offense in the past. Thankfully, G4 is irrelevant, so we don't have to hear about that anymore.
That was when he was like with Rev 3, I think, too. That is a blast from the past. That
Rev 3. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it just bursted into my. I had like a Jimmy Neutron like brain blast moment where it's like the achievement like came bursting into my head.
Way. All right. This is an interesting one. I put this one in last minute. Mustafa El Kurati wrote into us and said, "Hello, CDC. I have a personal inquiry, but I feel you may be the right guys to ask. I highly doubt we're the right guys to ask."
Yeah, Jesus.
Doubt.
I had an appointment last Thursday with a hygienist to have my teeth cleaned. She was very nice and did a great job. We got to talking, and we sort of had a connection and we're getting along. I don't know if she was flirting with me, as just when I was leaving, she asked me what I was doing after this, and I said nothing. Then I asked her, and she said the same thing. What I want to know is, was she flirting with me? Or did I miss out on the opportunity to go on a date? Is there still hope for me in my relationship with the hygienist? Any advice you can give me, let me know. Give the bird a break. Thank you, Mustafa, for writing in. Chris, what do you think of this? Was there something going on here?
See, a lot of this, when you transcribe an interaction, a lot of context is lost because you're not taking into account the tone. You're not taking into account like the context of like what time of day was it? You know, if it's like the last thing, then like if it's the last patient she's seeing, then like I don't imagine that what are you doing after this is like necessarily all that flirtatious. But at the same time, I can say from personal experience, I have never had a doctor of any kind walk up to me and say, "What are you doing after this?" Ever. Not once have I been inquired about, like, my doctor doesn't care what the hell I'm doing after this. He just wants to vaguely heal me and send me off into the world.
Right.
You know, so like, I don't know. I think it's an open question, but I think tone is important to these kind of conversations.
Definitely. I must have even told this story on the show, but maybe not. I was in Santa Monica and I was going to Kaiser for which is the like big HMO in California. And I was going there for like an appointment, and I earnestly, and I didn't mean anything by it, but I earnestly asked the nurse, like, you know, they put you in the room and stuff. And I was like, should I disrobe? And she was like, disrobe? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, yes. Like, am I supposed to take my clothes off? And she was just laughing or whatever. And I was like, oh man, the things these people probably hear, and like, it goes both ways, because God knows she probably thought I was flirting with her or something, but I wasn't. I was literally just asking, should I get naked? You know, by the way, the other thing that bothered me about that place and other doctors' offices I've been to since in Virginia, why aren't they being more exact about the weight? They're telling me to get on the scale, but I have like my shoes on and a coat on, and they just don't seem to care. It's like, what, we just vague, like, again, vague, just some sort of approximation of my weight. I mean, it seems like it's a pretty important thing to nail down. You know, why don't you might as well put the armband for my blood pressure over my sweatshirt. It's the same thing. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
You just
as far as Dustin, is there anything else that we should say about this? Or are you?
Well, I feel like Chris is right. The context, it's hard to transcribe this, but I will say from personal experience, oftentimes if I've been in a conversation with a doctor or a dental hygienist, whatever, the question more so would be, do you have plans for the weekend or for the rest of the day? And I feel like that's kind of more the way that people ask that now, but a very direct, what are you doing after this? That is a different feeling to it to me. But this is a big risk overall, because let's say that you're like, hey, yeah, do you want to go get coffee? And she goes, no. What if next time you get your teeth cleaned, she has to clean your teeth and you have to lay there with your mouth agape, thinking about this awkward moment that happened 6 months between you and this woman?
Yeah, you got to get out of there at that point.
Might not be worth the risk.
No.
Might not.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking they see you so intimately that if she did like you, it's like a really nice qualifier for your dental health, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, this guy's got, I mean, think of the mouth she sees all sorts of mouths. And she's like, this is the mouth I want. This is the man.
I don't know. I'm a bit of an anti-dentite myself.
Yeah, sure. Got to get the Seinfeld reference in there somewhere.
Gotta.
Peyton Stone wrote into us and said, hey, CDC, Gran Turismo 7 reviews are coming in and it's sitting at an 88 on Metacritic. With the hype of the 25th anniversary as well as positive reviews, will any of the three of you give it a shot? Deserves to be played on PS5. Can't wait to see you guys in April. He's referring to the live show. Of course, we'll see you then. What do you think? Gran Turismo 7, it's out. It's doing well. 88. That was one of my picks in the fantasy draft, so I'm quite pleased with an 88. I was hoping for more like a 90, but I'll take an 88. I don't know that I'm going to play this game. I don't think I have the chops for it. I think there are too many other games to play. I highly doubt I'm going to be into it because it is a simulator as opposed to an arcade game. I mean, I've been exposed just very briefly to many Gran Turismo games when I would go to Sony events back in my media days. And these people used to just watch me and laugh when when I'd play games, including Bloodborne. I remember playing Bloodborne for the first time. They were just like, Jesus Christ. And I remember with Gran Turismo, I was just riding the walls of the track. And like, you can't, I'm just hitting gas and going, trying to just go. You know, it's not how you play Gran Turismo. So I play Gran Turismo. I don't know what you want from me. So this game isn't for me, but I'm sure it's for many. It is going to sell many millions of copies. Gran Turismo Sport, the last Gran Turismo game, sold like 12 million copies. So I wouldn't sleep on this game being a major seller. And I'm curious, Chris, are you going to give it a go?
I think so. I think I might wait a little bit because I got a lot on my plate right now. But I think fall of last year was when Forza Horizon 5 came out. And I gave it a shot because it was on Game Pass. It was free. And I actually found myself enjoying it. And I think I have like a bit more context by which to enjoy these types of games. I think, especially with the DualSense being as interesting as it is, I feel like that was the one thing that I was playing Forza Horizon 5 and feeling like, oh, this would be so cool this kind of game would be so cool with a DualSense. And so now I have that opportunity. So I'll definitely pick it up. I'm trying to, in general, play a lot more games that I probably wouldn't have otherwise played years ago if not for the show. I feel like it just makes me a more well-rounded person, and I appreciate that. And I'm excited to play it. It looks gorgeous.
It does. It really does. Some controversy, I think, about ray tracing in the game. I haven't really looked into it too much, but I don't know what that's all about. But
I don't know. I didn't even hear about it.
It's there's only ray tracing on playback, not during gameplay.
That's okay.
So,
I mean,
weird.
That kind of sucks, but that must be to keep the frame rate.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So.
For me, this is a game that I desperately want to check out from a technical perspective just to see how beautiful it is. I'm really hoping my friend Brandon buys it. He's already been flirting around with the idea of getting it, and then he can just bring it over to my house or I can see it. And it's one of those games that I know I'm not going to be good at. I know it's not for me, but I'm still, I'm intrigued, especially after that state of play, just the attention to detail. I always appreciate something that clearly has a level of artistic value to something I do not understand very much is something I can still appreciate. So I want to check it out at some point, but I will not be dropping the $70 on it for something I will not probably enjoy.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's a bit of a steep price for something that I know that I like as far as completion. It's like I'm not going to complete Gran Turismo 7. No way.
Right.
I don't know how to play these games really. I just kind of like them sometimes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Z28 back on the show. I think I don't want to review it but just to discuss the game, how it's doing, and all of that in the coming weeks. Of course, he was the one a couple months ago. I did an episode all about Gran Turismo 7 and why people are excited about it, because it's just a game we can't speak to between the three of us. And it's the same reason why I had Vince and Janito on to talk about fighting games. Although that scratches something in me, because I was a fighting game person in the 90s and early 2000s. So there's always like this itch. I gotta wait when it wasn't sprites and hand draw and all that. I was not interested in it anymore.
I kind of agree.
But there is still that stuff too. I just kind of got out of it. And Arc System Works is actually the company that kind of draws me back. SNK a little bit too, but their ownership being muddy is kind of a turnoff to me. But with Gran Turismo 7, it seems like people are gonna be busy with this one. The timing is a little conspicuous just because of the other games that are coming out. We have Horizon and then Elden Ring and then this. But this seems like the kind of game. This is first of all, a background radiation game. This is a game people play for years as they're playing other things. This isn't going to just take over forever for you, although it will maybe for some people. Two things, and we talked about this on the podcast all about Gran Turismo 7. Will this game come to PC? It is apparently on PC, where racing games are doing nuts right now. And he was telling me about games, as I said on a recent episode, he was telling me about racing games on PC only racing games that are considered actually like the best of the best. Like, it's not necessarily Gran Turismo or Forza anymore, not even close. And so will they compete in that space? And the second thing is, how's this bad boy going to look on PSVR 2? Because it is.
Ooh.
That's going to be an exciting prospect as well. And maybe they'll drop the price at that point. Maybe they'll release like some sort of special version. Who knows? But Gran Turismo 7 is out, so enjoy. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp, and listeners can get 10% off their first month of sessions at betterhelp.com/symbols. I don't mean to sound trite or anything, but life is hard. It really is. It has its ups and downs, and that's true for every single one of us. It's quite literally the human experience. The key in navigating said experience, however, is knowing when some outside assistance can help you. And with BetterHelp, well, that assistance is on the other side of your computer screen or smartphone. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. This affordable, accessible, and modern approach to therapy has attracted more than 2 million people so far, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But I think paramount among them is the idea that you don't have to go meet someone in person to get the full benefit of therapy. You don't even need to see them or hear their voice. It's what you have to say to each other that's important, and you may have a lot to say, and that's great. For instance, relationships can be a real sticking point in a person's life, not just romantically, but with friends, family, and coworkers. Therapy can help you better navigate these relationships with the understanding that self-care is as important as the care for others you put into the world. And the potential of therapy doesn't stop there, because it can help you tackle anxiety, depression, issues with confidence or performance at work or at home, and so much more. Open your mind to therapy, and chances are you'll be happy you did. Go to betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS and get started on your self-care journey the modern way. Again, that's betterhelp.com/symbols for customized online therapy that can put you in touch with a provider in under 48 hours. Guys, Kotaku is on strike. Actually, all of Gizmodo Media Group is on strike. And the strike began on Tuesday, the 1st of March. And apparently the editorial contract and media creation contract between Kotaku, Gizmodo, Jalopnik, Jezebel, Lifehacker, and The Root, so 7 websites that used to be kind of under a more auspicious umbrella with like Deadspin and others. Their contract with Go Media, which is the newest owner of those websites, expired, and they have gone on strike. And GamesIndustry.biz relays word from the GMG union, their representation, which says, quote, since January 31st, the Gizmodo Media Group Union and Go Media's outside counsel have met 5 times. Every session, the company's outside counsel sidestepped and delayed, refusing to provide written counter proposals to the union's good faith proposals. How can you bargain a contract when the people across the table won't even clearly state what they're advocating for, end quote. The union said Go Media was refusing to add work from home flexibility into the contract or commit to keeping its remote workers remote. The union also criticized the company as being unwilling to commit to healthcare standards for trans employees, sufficient parental leave, or diversity hiring initiatives, as well as lowballing salary. The union said 93% of its membership participated in a strike authorization vote, and 100% of those voting were in favor of the action. So, as I said earlier, I reached out about this. to the GMG union. I talked to someone over Twitter DM. They gave me an email address. I reached out to that email address, and I haven't heard back since. My suspicion is that they're not going to want to talk to me, because after I had this contact, I was thinking, I'm like, all right, so how can I present this fairly to the audience? Because number one, I don't like Kotaku, and it is personal. Why is it personal? Because they've written hit pieces about Chris and I. That's why it's personal. Yeah. And what I was going to say at the very beginning to the representative's face is like, listen, we have a bias against Kotaku for these reasons. I want to say that at the top. I want to remove all of that bias as best we can, and let's present the story to the audience that doesn't care about that drama but wants to know more about this. But I haven't heard back, and I suspect they're going to have a kibosh thrown on that, which is fine, but I wanted to try to tell the story nonetheless. Dustin, let's go to you first. What do you think about this Kotaku strike and the potential of it, I don't know, soliciting change or not?
I honestly, this is a difficult one just because it seems like it's a bit of a standstill between the two of them, and it's hard. Like, there's some loose, like, they want XYZ or whatever, but there's always multiple sides, and maybe some unrealistic demands, or maybe demands that seem obvious that it seems weird that the parent company wouldn't want to meet. Maybe there's a little bit of both, but either way, it seems to me, as someone who doesn't know a lot about unions and how things like this work, that this is a really risky move for a site that is clearly on a downward trajectory to be doing this. Like, to me, I don't know much about their parent company, but it's like, at what point would their parent company be like, well, this isn't worth it, and then just shut it down or just hire new people? I guess that's probably part of the calculated risk of the union, but it's hard to say without more detail. And it's no diss against the gamesindustry.biz article, because I'm looking over it now, but it just feels, from the outside right now, it feels somewhat vague.
I agree with you in the sense that I'm really feeling and really enjoying watching these various worker movements around the United States and around the world that are getting great gains from I think corporate entities that are taking advantage of them. The thing about this, and I think this is the point, Dustin, that you're making, to put a fine point on it, is I'm not so sure Kotaku's workforce is irreplaceable. Now, I'm not saying that factory floor isn't replaceable either, but I would argue that depending on the nature of that work, that's, low skill, middle skill, high skill, educated work, trade work. Writing about video games, I've said many times, is a great honor. It's not difficult. To do it at the top of your game is hard. To have that work ethic is hard. But I feel like they're lacking the key leverage. That, remember when Caterpillar, I think, that was shut down, and they literally had to get office workers to go and run the floor, and they were like fucking all this shit up. And this was like 6 months ago, I think. And eventually they're like, fine, just please come back. We'll give you exactly what you want. It's because they had real leverage. These guys have to ask themselves, what if we just fired Kotaku's? Like, to the point you made, what if we just fired these guys? Like, this might actually be our chance to save these brands. And I look at that specifically with Kotaku, Chris, and I'll throw it over to you. I look at that sometimes and I'm like, man, give me that brand. I'll turn it around. Like, can you imagine how easy it would be to turn a site like Kotaku around? Like, first of all, it can't get any worse. But all you have to do is have like some likable writers and a coherent message to your audience. And I don't think that they hold the sufficient leverage over their workers. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask them about, was like, what is your leverage, and why do you think you have the leverage to make? I think their baseline salary, Kotaku, is something like $65,000 or $70,000 a year, which is about what I made at the very top of my time at IGN. And I was getting a lot more eyeballs than Kotaku. So I just wonder what you think of this.
Yeah, well, I have a strong bias, and I'm petty enough to let it take charge. In this instance, I don't necessarily care what happens to Kotaku. I'm kind of annoyed that we're even still talking about him. Just in general, not that we are still talking about it, but that they're still around in the first place. Because I thought like we were done with this when Gawker Media got shut down by Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And then they just got they clawed their way out. It's like, oh my God, they're still around. And then they went on to write those wonderful hit pieces about you and I. I don't know. Obviously, a website. There's more than one person at a website. Obviously, you can't just there are probably good people working at Kotaku, I'm sure. But it's just one of those things where I personally question the value of Kotaku inherently. Like what, like I don't know anybody who reads Kotaku. The only time I ever hear about it is when some absurd headline makes the rounds on Twitter and everybody's just dunking on it. I don't know if it, I don't know if their value is to be an unintentional onion, but it seems like that's kind of what it is. And I don't know if they can squeeze more money out of a giant corporate entity that owns them, then more power to them. All for that, but I don't think Kotaku's worth saving.
Yeah,
personally,
I agree. I think we've said
that's my very petty take.
Well, I think it's totally fine to be petty. I also think it's within line of the realistic nature of their situation. We talked about when Patricia Hernandez took over the site and wrote that what I thought was just a shocking letter, although shocking in a good way. I thought it was great. The letter to the audience, and that was basically a fucking will. Basically, it was like saying like we know we're gonna die, and we're gonna just do it the best we can do. But when I read the site every week. I sit down and read the site every week in preparation for this show, along with many other sites, just to see what people are saying. I read it. I go from the last week and I just open a bunch of new windows. And I notice on their site, I just open less and less, fewer and fewer things come through that are interesting. And that's a sign to me, because you're saying like we're tired of us talking about this, generally speaking. And I agree. But it's important for me to remove my own personal bias to talk about this, because it is a relevant action in what I feel like is a dying portion of the game space. And the outcome here, I think, is going to be very telling, because if I were at Go Media, I would very seriously ask myself, now you would have the bad will of many writers in the industry that would refuse to write for your site, but I would say that would be a good thing. You can just get a bunch of new blood because you're crossing a picket line technically, but just say like, you guys can go. We will hire a new staff and start again. It can't get any worse. And that would be really interesting. And sites like The Escapist have done that somewhat successfully, I think. And maybe they can find a way to survive there. But the reason that this bothers me, I think, is most encapsulated here. Dharma Police wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Good day, gentlemen. Do you think that sites such as Kotaku have made much ado about unionization in the games industry because of their own internal labor disputes over the past few years? I feel like concepts such as crunch were once admirable, considered honorably necessary in creating real art, and yet when Kotaku began obsessing over it a few years ago, making it a wedge issue in games journalism, it suspiciously coincided with their own personal labor disputes. Overnight, crunch became a tainted concept, flipped on its head and stripped of any former dignity. Is it possible that this crisis of crunch and broader topic of unionization was fabricated by sites such as Kotaku as a byproduct of their burgeoning unionization? Or is there a more nuanced history I am unaware of here? Thank you so kindly for your own tremendous work, and be well." There's definitely truth to this. And I don't think they're fabricating anything, because I think that there is a workers movement in various parts of the games industry. There are worker-owned studios that make great games, such as Motion Twin, which are the guys that made Dead Cells. But I feel, and that's great. That's whatever. That's totally fine. But I think I can say this from my experience, being in the industry since 2002, as a paid person, like a real person in the industry, not just someone, not some orbiter. Not a goddamn person talked about unionization until certainly after I left IGN, and maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, that wasn't a thing. So it's definitely being injected from other places. I don't necessarily mind seeing it, but it does come off as disingenuous. And that's why I keep asking why sites like Kotaku just don't put more of an emphasis on providing different viewpoints. That's what I'm trying to do on our show. I'm not trying to pat our back, although I'm very happy to pat our back, but it's just important to not pretend. And we're going to talk about that later with the Russia situation and how it's affecting games. It's important not to pretend that there isn't another side, or that there isn't more to say, or that there isn't something else, because I think it only strengthens to a finer point whatever you're trying to do. Or if you're trying to keep that away as a wall against something that's weak, it should break what you're trying to do, because that's the natural order of things. So I just feel like I want to see how this plays out. And dying on a hill like better trans healthcare, it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, that's great. I mean, trans people deserve the same level of fine healthcare that anyone else would receive. But there are, for every 1,000 people in American society, 3 trans people. This is what you're going to stake your entire union on? Okay. I mean, good luck. Nvidia. PC Gamer reports, a lot of other places, or I'm sorry, PC Mag reports. Nvidia confirms company data was stolen in hack. And so there was another catastrophic leak of Nvidia. Apparently, this is in some way much more serious since it's apparently source code for some of their proprietary technologies. This I just want to, including DLSS, which I think is used in many, many products.
Mm-hmm.
So, Chris, let's go to you. First of all, I wanted to bring this up just because I wanted to note that clearly the Nvidia leak from GeForce is real. Not only because many games from it have been revealed and even some of them are released since then, but because they are clearly susceptible to massive hacking. I have no idea how this is possible. What do you make of this news story?
I mean, what I make it, Jesus, they need some engineers over there working on something. It feels like they have the equivalence of like a knee-high picket fence around their most important data and their most like secure information. How their source code gets leaked after the already like egregious breach of just all the games that were leaked of how long ago was that leak now? Like what, like almost a year ago?
Yeah, about a year ago, I wouldn't say. Yeah.
It's, I don't know. It makes me wonder how secure Nvidia is and how much this would actually damage their reputation as far as like, I wonder if people are going to start looking at like, oh man, I don't know if I want that card in my in my PC, you know?
Well, that's what I was thinking too. Not only from a user standpoint, we interface with graphics cards and all this kind of stuff, but if you're a corporate entity, how can you ever trust these guys again? It's wild to me that this happened. Dustin, do you have anything that you want to say about the Nvidia company data leak?
Yeah, I mean, it's very unfortunate. Luckily, though, Nvidia is saying right now they have no evidence of ransomware being deployed on the Nvidia environment, and they say they do not anticipate any disruption to our business or our ability to serve our customers. So the good news is, if you are an Nvidia customer and have their, card in your computer, they're confident that you're okay. But the bad news is, like you said, it sets the precedent of, it's like, okay, you guys have been hacked and had over how much? What did this say here? Like a terabyte?
Yeah, terabyte of data, including
terabyte.
schematics, drivers, firmware,
Yeah,
source code.
Which apparently also there was people have been combing through some of the stuff that has leaked, and there may be references to the next Nintendo Switch in there
I
as
saw
well,
that,
which
yeah.
is kind of interesting. Not that there's a whole lot there, but it was a line of whatever. So overall, though, man, you would expect companies like this to be better at this, since this is kind of, a big part of what they do.
Yeah.
Coding, computer stuff, but apparently security, not high on the list, I guess. But just as a, people out there, protect your passwords and stuff. Get a password manager. I highly recommend that. It's important. Keep it up to date.
Yeah. It's just crazy that this happened after that already egregious leak,
right?
Like you'd think that would kind of inspire them to maybe like upgrade some of this stuff, but I don't know, live and learn, or not, I guess.
It's shadows of Sony just with PSN, and then a few years later, Sony Pictures, right?
Oh yeah,
the Sony Pictures hack.
That's right.
Was much more famous because it was so much data and information, emails, and all of that. But PSN was kind of the canary in the coal mine.
That was the one where they leaked the emails about like, oh, we want Andrew Garfield to say that's ballin' or something.
Or
something like that. That wasn't it exactly, but it was something like we want Peter Parker to have a Snapchat, like a Snapchat account for Spider-Man in the next movie, because dude, that's what the kids are doing. Those emails are amazing.
Oh my god, it's
to
awesome.
Read through.
It's awesome. It's horrible. Creative bankruptcy. All right, NIS, Nippon Ichi Software, famous Japanese publisher and developer, and NIS America, of course, its wonderful Western partner that brings its niche, often Japanese wares to the West. They have a new logo. I don't expect either of you to necessarily have anything to say about this. I like NIS a lot. Of course, the biggest NIS published game here was Danganronpa, although that went back to Spike Chunsoft in recent years, which is their developer. I don't like this logo. It's not as bad as the Bandai Namco one, Dustin, but it's just generic Asian style tech. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, like that is exactly what it is. It's that Asian style paint brush, very curved and sharp, and it's a little too on the nose for Nippon Ichi Software with Japan in its name. So I'm curious what you make of this, Dustin.
Colin, this font looks like a font that, like you said, like on a menu at a Japanese restaurant. Like it's too on the nose. And I like their old logo. Not that I thought it was like the best logo ever, but there's no color in it either. It's just black or white NIS in I don't know, inky, like you said, like the Japanese font, whatever it is, for
it's
like a scroll,
like
a scroll. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just boring, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I can't stand it. It enrages me.
They're trying to follow the same flow of the old NIS logo, which starts with that long N and then the long S. And I totally get that, but I just didn't feel like it was necessary. Not that NIS is NIS. It's funny. I got to give them their credit along with Axis and Xseed. But NIS, think more than anyone, they were really there for Japanese-centric gamers when it wasn't good or even profitable to be there. And they were just bringing so much stuff to the West. And, of course, central to that is Disgaea, but there's a lot. So shout out to NIS. Maybe you'll change that logo like Bandai Namco, because just the change of the color of the Bandai Namco logo made it 10 times better.
That is true. It's interesting to see the fonts that logos go. Can I say something? I want to bring this up. I want to bring this up. I want to posit this to the audience as well. Is there an agreement between the stops? Like, is there an agreement between GameStop and Sushi Stop that they use the same exact font and same exact color, and they don't? You've never seen a Sushi Stop?
I've never heard of this place.
It's the same.
I'm looking it up.
It is exactly the same logo.
Holy shit! And it really is the exact same thing.
And it bothers me so immensely because it's impact font and it's the red and white in exactly the same spots. And I just want to ask why.
This
is not related to
unbelievable.
video games at all. But I want to posit this to the audience because somebody out there must know.
It reminds me of because that is an interesting inquiry, because it reminds me of, when there's like a local business taking over another business or whatever, and they try to incorporate sometimes like the element of what was there to be their own. There's I think it's massage therapy places that I shit you not, when I saw it, before I realized it was like some sort of chain, I was like, they literally incorporated Stone Cold Creamery's entire shtick in their logo, because I guess they took over a Stone Cold Creamery, and then I was like, oh no, it just looks like Stone Cold Creamery, but in blue instead of red.
You mean Cold Stone?
Oh, Cold Stone, Stone Cold,
Stone Cold Creamery, 316, baby. Let's go.
There's finally we found the merch that we won't get in trouble for selling. Cold Stone Creamery, right in that down.
Stone Cold.
Thank you. Yes. I think we can get away with that one.
We can. We will.
I hope so. Cold Stone Creamery. Has no one done that? I don't know. I'm scared. I meant, what is it? Cold Stone Creamery.
Cold Stone is what it is.
That's the one where they put the thing on the brick and they like do the.
Yeah. They put the ice cream on the brick and then they make it. They alchemy it into some fucking weird.
And they
paste.
sing, right?
They do. Yeah, they do sometimes.
They have the stupid names for the sizes. It's like love it, gotta have it, or something like that. It's
my god, yeah.
Don't feel like I'm not.
That's when I stopped. I went there once, and then I never went there again after they were like, oh, you get. I want a large one, and they're like, oh no, it's a gotta have it, right? I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
It sounds like a Seinfeld episode where like George and Jerry refuse to say it, and so they won't. They're not able to order.
Yeah.
Anyway. Dustin, I wanted to touch on this one with you. Funimation, all of its content is going to Crunchyroll. Now, we knew this was going to happen because of the acquisition of I guess, fusing of these companies with Sony. at the helm. I'm curious what you make of this as an anime nerd. Is this a big deal?
Yeah, it is a big deal, definitely, because these are the two biggest services. To my understanding, Funimation focuses a lot more on dubs than subs. I don't know if that's still the case. That used to be the case a few years ago when I was trying to decide which service to buy into. And so I'm kind of two minds about this, in that having having them together is good for a consumer, that they don't need to buy two of them. But these are the two biggest anime streaming services, and so they're not a monopoly, because there's anime on Netflix and Hulu. It's much smaller offering, and I think High Dives is still out there, but it's still consolidation that this show has always been against and will continue to be against. But at least there is a bit of a silver lining with this one, that if there's select shows like I think the Persona 4 Golden anime was only on Funimation, and so when I wanted to watch that years ago, I had to do a trial or whatever. But so more offerings for the anime fans out there, but it's worth keeping an eye on with Crunchyroll, because they're not necessarily a perfect company, no doubt.
Ryan Goldner wrote into us on Patreon, says, "Hey, Sacred, with the consolidation of Crunchyroll and Funimation into one, is this something we could potentially see bundled into one of the Spartacus tiers? I don't expect day one first-party games due to the quality and high sales figures of their games, but this would be a big addition to many anime lovers like myself. Thanks as always for the terrific content." Curious about this. Chris, do you have any thoughts on if maybe this will be one of the pieces of the puzzle? Because we kind of see we see other things where we assume PS Now is going to be folded into this. We don't know if PlayStation Plus will even survive, or if it'll be folded in or rebranded. My assumption is everything will be called PlayStation Plus something. But
Yeah.
this isn't a terrible idea, because remember, at least I don't know that you guys ever endorsed this, but I always had the idea, and I've said it many times on this show, that why doesn't Sony try to, like, they got scared off after they did Powers, that show Powers, but really they were kind of ahead of the game. They were trying to make original content for PlayStation Plus when a lot of these streaming services didn't even exist at all. And
Yeah.
I know that they're trying to find, and we're going to talk about Twisted Metal later, they're finding good partners everywhere with HBO and Peacock, but I feel like non-game services might be a key component to this, because why wouldn't it be if you own these different assets? So what do you think about this?
I don't know. I think I'm of two minds about this, where I feel like, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe like offer a free trial or something for this Funimation Crunchyroll thing. But at the same time, my mind always goes back to the Xbox One reveal, where they were talking about TV and cable boxes, and look, you can plug your cable box into your Xbox and you can talk to the Kinect to make it change a channel. Whoa, isn't that something you want? And I feel like anytime you have a gaming service that operates with any kind of connection to television, I just feel like it doesn't go well necessarily, like optically speaking. I think it'd be a good like value for the consumer, and I think there'd probably be a lot of people who might not know what the hell Crunchyroll is, who might suddenly like find themselves exploring it and maybe getting some new customers that way. But at the same time, like I feel like their best bet is to keep Spartacus as games focused as possible, because I feel like anything else will be seen as kind of like grasping for things, like desperately like scrounging, like what can we do? Anime. We have a lot of anime here. Game Pass doesn't have anime. We have anime. And it just seems it feels a little disjointed, even though I do think it would be a good value for the consumer. Is kind of how I view it.
Yeah, we'll see. I think if we're going to inexorably move towards subscription services,
Mm-hmm.
then I think they need to have options within them. And I always found
I think you're right.
I'm sorry?
I think you're right, but
Yeah.
I think eventually maybe.
Yeah.
Like at some point in the future, I don't think you want to come out the gate with this kind of like muddied message of what this service is.
Sure.
I think it's always better to evolve a service into something else than it is to kind of start with this kind of idea of where it could be at some point. You know?
Fair enough. I think key amongst all this is that Sony doesn't have to do that, because people are going to subscribe to Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
So there's really no need. But it would be interesting to kind of fuse them together. Like you can, for instance, on Amazon, and I've done this. I don't know if I would do it again. I need to get HBO again soon because we're going to do Game of Thrones on Knockback in the coming weeks or start it. And I got rid of HBO, but I used to get my HBO subscription under Amazon. Like, and you'd have to go into Amazon and then use HBO there. And so you can see Sony making some sort of ecosystem. Like when they closed the PlayStation media store, which I thought was conspicuous and weird because I don't know why you would stop doing that. Maybe it was in the name of something like this. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Of course, there's these mystery possible connections with Netflix as well that still haven't been fleshed out. All right. A couple more notes. TGS 2022 Tokyo Game Show will be in person September 15th to 18th at Makuhari Messe in Chiba, Japan. Haven't been there in a long time. Mega building over there in the Tokyo suburbs. This is awesome. So as usual, the first 2 days, September 15th and 16th will be business only days. That's when I would go to the show. And then 17th and 18th are public days. You'd be absolutely insane to be there on public days amongst the just massive people. But I'm glad that a society that has been pretty closed off and pretty responsible during COVID, maybe a little too responsible, closing the borders and doing a lot of stuff like that, although that's certainly their prerogative, they're embracing in-person shows. Now, I had to say this. I don't know if you guys saw that there is what appears to be a theme song. Nothing Stops Gaming, it's called. I haven't heard it, but they wrote the lyrics. And Gamatsu relays them, and here's what the lyrics are.
Oh, no.
We had to give up doing fun things one after another over these 2 years. How many times we thought, what happened to our days? Even then, we still had games that kept us going. Thrilling plot twists, captivating and heated experience lighted up our everyday life. Games became our hope. 2022 is the year to show the real spirit of games. Tokyo Game Show has the mission to create our hope and beyond. Update our possibilities. Unprecedented excitement is always born out of something you have never imagined. Let's open the gate to the forefront of games. Give courage and enthusiasm to everyone. Show your love of games to each other. For everyone to share the great feeling of living in this era, let's dive into the heart of game craze. Nothing stops gaming.
That doesn't rhyme at all.
No, I don't know what that was all about.
Well, it's
That's a
translated.
song?
I'm sure that's
it says it's the theme.
Yeah,
So
no,
it was
it's
relayed
translated.
as presumably a song that is sung. Yes, although we
That
have
is
not heard it yet.
I mean, rhyming or no rhyming, that's a really like expository theme song. You know, it's a bit much.
Thrilling plot twists.
That makes me think, like, you know, they have their own theme, and we introduced the Gamer Battalion last week.
Stand down.
Colin, I was thinking, does the Gamer Battalion, I don't know if we need a song like TGS, but maybe we need a creed for the Gamer Battalion.
Yeah, let's think about
I don't know whether you should write it or we should have submissions from the audience or something. Man, I could see like if we figure out some kind of logo for the Gamer Battalion and then the creed is on the back, I think we're onto something with this.
Yeah, I'm trying to look like the Marines creed, the Marines rifle creed. This is my rifle. There are many like, I don't think I'm even supposed to be saying this because I'm not a Marine.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't.
But yeah, there is the my rifle creed. So we can have something like that.
This is my controller.
Yeah, this is
like
my
that.
control. All right. I won't say anymore. I want to disrespect the Marines as like the last people I want to disrespect. my good friends, the Marines. I know a few Marines close in my life. Be surprised that they're killing machines, but they are. All right. Final piece of news small piece of news before we get into a brief letter and then what we're playing. Just wanted to point out, Push Square, canny-eyed Sammy Barker over at Push Square notes that Horizon Forbidden West PS4 on PS5 could be getting DLC expansions. Now, this would be not unprecedented. Horizon Zero Dawn rather had the Frozen Wilds, but it could be that they're going to be more intimately connected as opposed to something that is standalone or in between standalone and connected. And so here's what they wrote. It says, there's a strong chance you've barely scratched the surface of Horizon Forbidden West, but even if you've barely made it out of the Daunt, you may be interested to learn that DLC expansions could be on the way. A video published by VSC Ratings Board, the statutory body that rates video games in the UK, mentions the inclusion of an online storefront in the game used to purchase DLC expansions. And then so they went and checked the PEGI rating, and it does indeed mention in-game purchases for Horizon, which is something that is kind of flown under the radar. So we won't know anything about this yet. And there was a major expansion, like we said, and as the article notes, with Horizon Zero Dawn, but just for everyone to keep an eye out. Maybe we're going to get something a little more fluid and maybe in more bite sizes, which would be kind of cool. something to keep an eye out for Horizon, and we'll talk about that momentarily. However, I wanted to go to this letter from Mighty Max before we get into what we're playing. He says, "This will be brief, but also heartfelt." Oh, thank you. "I am getting married this summer to the love of my life, and I wanted to invite you three beauties to the event. Though I fully expect your busy schedule will cockblock you from attending this awesome party, I still expect you fuckers to keep me in your thoughts and hearts for about 2 whole minutes. I wish to honor the sacred symbols in some way during the event. We already have 2 kids and none more planned, so I cannot fulfill Colin's wish to have a kid named after him. Any other suggestions as to how you would like to be paid tribute to? Think big, mofos." The world, as we say, Chris Raygun, is our oyster. So we have options here. Now, of course, the Colin tribute baby is the biggest thing you can do. There's nothing stopping you from renaming your child.
Yeah.
But I understand that the die is I'm sorry, Dustin?
I said nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Right, that's
Well,
right.
how old is the kid?
Right.
You know, if it's like it's a 2-year-old kid, he probably doesn't even know his
He
name.
has no idea. I mean, he's not going to know.
No.
Yeah, you could start that process pretty easily.
It's like when you rename a dog, because obviously not obviously, but I got my Bostons from a breeder, and they give them little nicknames they understand are going to be changed, and the dogs are going to be none the wiser. Rush's original name was Brutus, which is a perfect name considering he's huge for a Boston Terrier. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to ruin this. I want the potential to be fully realized if we have this opportunity. What if we just went?
Yeah, where's it at?
Well,
He didn't say.
This isn't a 2-way conversation, so we can't possibly know.
Mm.
But if we can't go, I what my suggestion would be, put us on the cake. Like, fuck you guys.
Yeah,
like,
there you go.
The 3 of us. Like,
yeah,
go figures.
yeah. Because you've already got what is it? He's already got kids. You know,
Right.
This isn't like the beginning of a new. This is a glorified title change. Really,
Right.
is what this is. So you're not really celebrating anything. Not to burst your bubble. So just put us on your cake. Make like a little 3D print something if you can. I know that's expensive, but I mean, you shouldn't spare any expense when it comes to us. So that would be my suggestion. If I see a wedding cake with the 3 of us on the top of it, or if you want, you could print us on it.
Yeah,
Which
that
would
would
be
be
really lame, by the way. That's print something on a wedding cake, but
that is a little budget for a wedding cake. But because I was gonna say you could have a very fancy, very ornate logo at the top as well. Like just the top of the cake is just the Sacred Symbols logo, but you could use the finest, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
So
The 3 men on the top of the cake, though, I mean, surely someone's gonna be like, is this the wrong cake for like a polygamy trio of gay men or something?
Yeah. It
Are
should
we
be
in suits?
and then we're just like, no, we're not gay.
No.
Oh, no, we're not gay.
Underneath us, there will be a plaque that says "Not gay," and then that'll be all the clarification.
Great friends.
Needed.
Just very good friends. The world is opening up all around us, and with that comes many possibilities forced into dormancy over the last couple of years. One such possibility is travel, and while I've personally seen enough of this cruel world to last several lifetimes, many of my friends and family members are eager to begin seeing this planet anew after 2 solid years of pretending to work and watching Netflix. And do you know what the best tool in the toolkit is when you go abroad? Knowledge of the local language. And this is where we queue up Babbel, the mega popular language learning app that sold more than 10 million subscriptions, giving tons of people access to 14 languages to learn the proper way. And I mean proper, because this isn't like learning in middle or high school with a bored teacher and a 40-year-old textbook talking about discotheques. Instead, Babbel is engineered by real people rather than AI, crafted by more than 100 language experts and tailor-made for 21st century learning. That means podcasts, games, videos, and all sorts of interactive tests and quizzes. That means voice recognition tech that helps with pronunciation and accents. That even means live classes. Babbel is pretty remarkable, actually, and it's clear as soon as you sign in. As a rusty old French student from yore, you know, the kind of guy that goes to Europe and Japan and insists on speaking English, I found Babbel to be quite accessible in its approach, relying upon practical use and small building blocks that don't overwhelm. The reality is, I don't have a gift for a second language. Some would argue I lack a gift for a first language. So if Babbel is workable for me, just imagine what it could do for you. And Babbel stands behind their product too. There's a 20-day money-back guarantee if you don't like the service. But I suspect you will, and thus, I think it's time you give Babbel a try for yourself. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you can get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to babbel.com. That's BABBEL.com and use the code SACRED. That's SACRED at checkout. That's babbel.com with the checkout code SACRED. Babbel, language for life. All right, my friends. Speaking of, let's get into what we're playing. Now, the way I want to go through this is this way. Dustin and Chris are both playing Elden Ring. Chris and I are both playing Horizon. Thus, I think we should start with Dustin, talk about Elden Ring. That can flow into Chris. He can talk about his games, end with Horizon, which will flow into my thoughts. And so, Dustin, let's talk to you. I think a lot of people, including me, are very eager to hear about your first week with From Software's Elden Ring.
See, I took a note here. I got to find where I put it. Give me one sec. Oh, wait. It's right here. Oh, yeah. It's the 97 on Metacritic. Just wanted to remind you guys about the 97.
Wow.
For the audio listeners, I've adorned the 97 on my shirt, and just because we can't seem to decide if the score is good or bad, if they matter, if they not. And I decided I picked the game, and so you know what? It's important. It matters because I've decided so. So, Elden Ring, guys, let's just take a step back. I just got to say, this is one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. And I am shocked that it has just blown my expectations out of the water completely. And it's one of those games that when you hit a point and it's pretty early on that you're like, damn, I am playing something incredibly special and I need to savor as much as I can of this because for the rest of my life, I will want to have this fresh experience of the first time playing this game. And this is just my personal experience with it, of course. It might not be everyone's one of the best games they've ever played, but this is just how I feel so far. So the one thing that I want to say off the top is just that I know that when people since 2017 compare games to Breath of the Wild, people instantly want to their eyes glaze over, roll their eyes, and just like tune it out because that's been like the most annoying comparison that has been overused over and over and over the years. But I feel like in this case, it is worthy of saying that. And I said this jokingly to Holly when I was playing it, but I'm wondering if Chris, if you agree, is that Elden Ring is Breath of the Wild for like adults. And I say that as a joke because I love Breath of the Wild and it's a fantastic game. But this game is the first game since that I've gotten this beautiful feeling of like discovery as I play it. The game invites me to explore its world over and over and over again. And what's just so shocking to me is that after having over 25 hours since last Friday, the level of surprise has not diminished. In fact, it's only gone up. Specifically, like there were instances of things that happened, which I don't even want to get into just because I want people to discover it for themselves. Where I had to text to Maddie because I knew that he was the only other person that I knew would have experienced some of the things in this game so far. Just because I was just so incredibly excited about what had happened. And overall, I think that saying that it's open world Dark Souls, while it is a very small way of looking at this, it is true. So if you're thinking about playing this game or picking it up, it is still very much a Dark Souls game. It has that difficulty and attention to its combat where it's like you must play it in the way that it intends to play. I will say that overall, and this is again a very personal thing, is that I'm finding this to be the less challenging Dark Souls games or of this nature that I've played so far. But part of that is just because of the way that the game is designed, is that if you get stuck on something, you can easily just go do something else and level up for a bit. Whereas other Dark Souls games, it's like, okay, well, if you can't beat this, you need to go grind out in the same linear path a bunch of times or something like that. This is not the case for this game. And overall, I'm just trying to figure out how to sum it up, is just that There are performance issues with the PS5 version. I've tested both of them. I've been playing the PS4 app because it's a lock 60, and I prefer to use the DualShock because it's easier on my thumb, as I've talked about before. But I guess overall, if you're trying to figure out if the performance issues should hold you back from playing it, I would say that it's not as big of an issue as I thought it would be last week, specifically when it comes to the PS5 version. It's not a locked 60. It does have some variable, not as smoothness, but overall, I think it's fine. It needs to be fixed. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to explain to the audience if performance is what's holding you back, don't let it. If you're interested in this game, I would say check it out as soon as possible because you don't want some of this shit spoiled for you. So I think that's it. I think that's all I have for my rant for now. We'll be talking about it, I'm sure, for weeks to come.
Well, let me ask you this. Remington Wilson asked you this, and I'll be his proxy. He says, "What's up, boys? This one's for Dustin. Dustin, is Elden Ring the best open world game you've ever played? After 40 hours, there is still so much to see and do. Rarely does a game live up to the hype, and Elden Ring exceeded my expectations, unlike Breath of the Wild. Take a bow from Software." So, best open world, yeah? You would confirm?
Yes, I think so. And I think it has a lot to do with how it is presented to the audience. And this is where I think that the most direct comparison is something like Breath of the Wild, where you're not gonna a little thing that says new side quest isn't gonna pop up. It's not gonna tell you exactly where to go. It wants you to discover a lot of these things for yourself. And I guess that won't be for everybody, but to me, it just feels so. It's a weird feeling of feeling free of like this laundry list of things to do. And at the same time, it's weird to say this is a positive, but like an overwhelming feeling is like when you unlock a new part of the map and you're like, holy shit, I feel like I've just scratched the surface of the last part of the map. And now there's another part and another part and another part. And you continue to explore, and it's not like, oh, you need to clear out this bandit camp, and then a little check mark goes, and you get experience or whatever. I mean, there is bandit camps, and there's caves and stuff like that, and there is some repeating of assets, but it always is presented in a new and different way. And so, Chris, I'm wondering, as a you're not an anti-Souls fan. In fact, you liked Sekiro a good deal, and I saw you've been streaming this like crazy. Are you finding to have a similar experience with this?
Yeah, so I'm playing on PC, which should be noted. There are performance issues on PC. Like there are.
Yes.
In fairness, I have a pretty stable 60, pretty much the overwhelming majority of the time. But every like 40 minutes or so, I'll get like 3 freeze frames. And sometimes that'll be like, I'll be exploring and it's not a big deal. But sometimes it's in the middle of a fight and that's extra frustrating. And there are little things about Souls games in general that kind of bug me that are still present here. I feel like inventory management is still really kind of awkward. And I still feel like whenever I get hit through a wall, it is still frustrating. Like just as it was 10 years ago, because I don't experience it that exact type of frustration in any other game. It seems to be just from games that do this. That said, I do have to say this is a very, very, very impressive video game. I am thoroughly shocked at just how much I love it. I think you kind of touched on a lot of it, but just the fact that there is no quest log and the fact that there is no, golden mark on your compass telling you where to go. And you can't press pause and see like what your objectives are. You talk to people and then they give you information and then you're expected to retain that information. And it kind of like sucks you in and it makes you look around and it makes you explore I don't even know how to put it. It reminds me a lot of Shadow of the Colossus, which is a really weird thing to say because Shadow of the Colossus is kind of famous for being empty and desolate. But the atmosphere of just not having your map clouded with markers and not having something as simple as this thing that's in Dying Light and in Horizon, this focus mode that's like, oh, press this to see things that you're supposed to see. There is none of that. You just have to see things. You have to explore. You have to survey the environment with your own eyes. And if somebody says there's a castle to the south, you have to venture to the south and look for the castle. And it's just the density of this game, despite how big it is remarkable. Like I have every single section of this game feels like a level that was like handcrafted, but it just never ends. And it never feels like I'm wasting time going through empty space. It never feels like there's nothing to find and nothing to discover. And I'll say this too, the enemy variety really should put a lot of developers to shame, I think. It is astounding how many different enemy types, how many different bosses are in this. And I'm not even remotely out of, I think I've explored, maybe 20% of the map so far. And I've already seen so many different types of enemies, and all with their own unique attack patterns and all with their unique way of approaching them. And this is, I think, the best open world game that I've played. And I understand now, I know we had this conversation last week about, oh, well, a lot of people didn't finish the game, and so they gave it like a 97. Is that fair? I completely understand. Because from an open world standpoint, it really does solve a lot of the problems that I've had with so many open world games. Just like the constant, like, oh my God, you have like a quest log and it's your main missions and your side missions all blend together because it just becomes this big malaise. And then you just feel like, I'm just going to beeline the story because all this other bullshit is just so taxing and egregious and just, I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but like, it feels really, really freeing, and it just gets out of your way so often, and it lets you focus on the moment. You know, there's not some beacon in the distance that you're like, oh man, I can't wait to go over there. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? No, you're always in the present, and you're always fighting what's in front of you. You're always like surveying the area around you. There's this one thing, I'll spoil one thing because I thought it was really impressive. There's this book open on a kind of a pedestal of some kind, and it says find the 3 beasts or whatever, and you find like some turtle and you hit it, and then you find other thing and then you hit it, and then the other beast is invisible. You can't see it. There's no focus mode. There's no like use your Witcher sense to track it. You just have to look around, and eventually you'll see the water moving, and you're like, oh shit. And then you go to the water, you hit it, and then sure enough, it's there. And it's like, no HUD markers at all were there to assist me. It was literally just me surveying the landscape with my own eyes. And I feel like this game just respects my intelligence. And for an open world game, I just feel like that's really rare.
Definitely. The exploration, I think, can't be understated in not just that in a lot of games you explore and you can find new areas, and sometimes it's rewarding and sometimes it's not. I am always shocked that every time sometimes I'll just sit down and say like, okay, I have 30 minutes, so I'm just going to go fuck around and see what I can find. And I can like almost always I'll find either a cool weapon or like a talisman for like a buff or something. Or even I'll just find a situation that is like intriguing to me. Like, for example, there's this was in the trailer long ago, so it's not a spoiler. Like, I'm walking around on my horse and there's a pot guy that's stuck in the ground, and he's like, hey, could you hit me really hard and help me out? I'm stuck. And so like you help this guy out, and he's like, yeah, I'm headed to this carnival over here. You should go. It'll be cool. And then you like find him later on, and so like there's this quest line with this pot guy. Or it's just like, what is this group of enemies doing here? They all are they're inflicted with madness, and their eyes are red and glowing, and so you can like read little bits of lore and figure out like what happened to this village and stuff like that. It's just
all with no markers, all with nothing on your HUD, nothing guiding you. It's awesome. The horse combat in this, how do you like Torrent?
Yeah, dude, he's a great, I wouldn't say he's like the best horse ever, but honestly, he's up there in that.
The best horse.
The best as far as a horse in game. Like I'm not.
He's a double jumping spirit horse. I think he's pretty up there, man.
I never thought that I would enjoy horseback platforming, but it somehow works.
It's crazy.
Overall, just like I didn't. You guys know that I'm a FromSoft fanboy, basically, and so you can take this with a grain of salt. But I didn't think From Software was capable of making this game. When they said that Dark Souls, not Dark Souls, but when they said they were going open world and presented what this game was, I thought, cool, this will be some Dark Souls levels that are standalone, and then like an open world that is mostly boring, with you ride around in a horse in between. I don't know. I didn't expect them to be able to pull something like this off, and it makes sense that this game. I believe this game entered development at the same time Sekiro did, and playing it now, it makes a lot of sense that it took them this long to make this game.
It's funny because I saw when I was doing my own reading about the game that some people in the pre-release environment were saying that you should have like a notebook or something to write things down. And a lot of people took umbrage with this. And to me, that sounded like an exciting prospect. I don't want to play a game where I'm like The Witness, where you had graph paper and people were like going nuts with that. I mean, that's many steps too far for me. But I do like the idea of taking notes, because that's the way you used to play JRPGs in the 8-bit and 16-bit era often, was to just make some notes. And for instance, in Final Fantasy IV and in Final Fantasy VI, there are side quests, but there's no way to know if you've done them or not, or if you've activated them. There's no quest log. You have to just go find them and do them. And so there's something romantic, about that, which I think is cool.
It brings the mystery back. I feel
indeed.
That's been missing for a long time.
Yeah, it's good to not know. Like that's a tantalizing part of the game. We'll get into why I don't know if I'm going to play it now, but I'll save that question for a little while. I did want to get into something Jordan Glaza asked though, and says, "Hey CDC, while Elden Ring is a great game, I don't think it's a 97 on Metacritic. Do you think there is a FromSoft bias, just like Nintendo? Don't get me wrong, both companies make great games, but it seems like they get an extra star, 10%, just because of who they are. What are your thoughts on this?" Dustin, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I don't know that I agree that there's a bias per se. I think there's a component of From Software fandom that eats up the forbidden knowledge of the games. And what I mean by that is they're just too hard for normal people. I think normal gamers are going to find any of the games too hard, not fun. And so that in and of itself says like, oh, you don't get it, you don't understand it, you're not good enough to play it. I think there is something to that. But I don't know that it comes through in criticism per se, as much as that comes through, of course, from the audience. And I've been open, as much as I'm joking around, I find the hardcore Souls audience to be really annoying. Like
me too.
Like insufferably annoying. And that is also an unfair, probably a very unfair charge to level. So I just wonder, what do you make of this bias? I'll get a little more into the 97 in a moment, but I'm curious if you feel like there's a bias.
So here's how I imagine it went with a lot of reviewers, because I think that, do we agree that the issue with the 97 is, for most people, is the idea of the performance, right? Does a game that doesn't have immaculate perfect performance deserve to have a 97? That's what I've been gathering.
Yeah, I want to get further into what my personal take is on that, but that's part of it, I would say.
So
for me,
here's what I would say is that a lot of reviewers played this game on PlayStation 5, most likely, or Xbox Series X. I think that a lot of them played it, and like I said, the frame rate is not super consistent on those versions, but it's not horrible. You're not getting major like low teens moments where the frame rate just doesn't work at all and it's unresponsive. It's overall pretty good. But again, I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to explain the situation. And a lot of reviewers if they're having an experience like me, as they were playing, were realizing like this is unlike any other game that has come before it. I don't want to say unlike completely, but it is taken things to a new level, unseen before. And for that and the experience, it is a masterpiece. It is a 10 out of 10. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. It means that the overall experience is so standout. I don't know. I mean, scores and reviews are subjective. That's how I always view it, is that like 10 out of 10, it should never mean perfect. But
Yeah.
I would argue on the other side of it is that if you are a reviewer and reviewing this on PC in the state that it was when it launched, it should have been dinged way lower, because those performance issues, from my understanding, are much more intrinsically tied to the gameplay experience being worse. And so which I'm wondering, if you go to Metacritic, like you can see the different versions of the game. So I'm wondering if the PC version scored lower. So PS5 version is 97. The PC version is 94, which that doesn't mean that all of these are just PC versions. So I don't know exactly how that works. But overall, now that I've played the game, I think that the score makes sense to me, just with my experience. Whether or not it's justified with some of the performance issues, I don't know. I can only speak to my time with the game, and it's been nothing short of amazing.
I mean, I'm on PC, and I'm having probably like the worst performance out of anybody that I know who's playing it, because everybody I know is playing on a PS4, like on the PS5 with the PS4 version, or
right,
vice versa. But I mean, even to me, like I understand the score, like still, like it is annoying, and it's frustrating for the few times that it does happen throughout a single play session. But I think design like this, and just combat like this, and just the sheer impressiveness of the enemy variety, and the art, and the presentation, I think all of those marry together into something that is genuinely special, regardless of the infuriating lack of a perfect performance.
right.
Which is something that I'm a performance person, arguably first, and I'm saying that, so that should, hopefully that carries enough weight. But it's a shocking game. I did not anticipate liking this, and especially with all the hype that was behind it. This is another Death Stranding moment for me, where I'm just like, oh, this can't be that good. And then I played. I'm like, this is insane. I can't believe it.
Christopher wrote in. A lot of people wrote in about this.
Yeah.
He says, hey guys, got to get this off my chest. Colin, I've been a huge fan since episode 120 or so of Beyond. I love you. However, your Elden Ring rant was borderline unhinged, and I am shocked Dustin or Chris didn't push back. First of all, I just want to stop here real quick. Nothing I said was remotely unhinged. I think you guys are really dramatic out there sometimes with the way you describe the way people talk. Does this show sound like an unhinged show to you? Like,
I would describe it as quite hinged.
Yeah, it's hinged. And I would say, so like, let's expand the vocabulary a little bit. Sounds a little ridiculous. You've long said, even in said rant, and I'll say it's a rant, sure, that you don't have to finish a game and review it, and that if you don't, it should be part of the thesis. Was it the thesis of most Elden Ring reviews that the game was so good that they felt comfortable giving it a 10? Unless Elden Ring ends with Hitler was right or something along those lines, I don't understand how you could be upset with reviewers, other than punching out a game you aren't interested in because it did well. One caveat, the technical issues are a huge issue, but I think it lands solely on Bandai and From releasing a patch after embargo that made the game worse. Sorry for the long-winded post. Hopefully I made my points whilst trying to be pithy. Thank you, Christopher, for writing in. So yeah, I'll speak to this further because I feel like there's some clarification that needs to be made. This 97 situation with Elden Ring is an illustration of why scores are stupid. And perhaps I need to like remind everyone about this on a constant basis. I don't know why, because we say it all the time on the show, but I don't want scores to exist at all. And I'm making fun of the 97 because it's the finest way for someone to encapsulate how they feel about a game. And people say like, well, you gave a 10 the Last of Us. I'm like, well, I worked at a place where we were giving out numbers, but I kind of wish that I was just able to review the game. If you read the review, there are criticisms of The Last of Us in the review. So I feel like this is it continues to do a disservice. And I agree with what Jeff Gerstmann had said a week or two ago, and I think we had said it, but I'll reiterate. Scoring games and this Metacritic stuff and all of this feeds nothing but like the worst elements of video games.
Yeah.
And it's true. Because what you think about Elden Ring is important to me, not the score that it gets. And we don't believe in score. I don't want to say we, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I don't believe in scores. I don't want them anywhere near our product.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather be able to have a conversation about the finer points of a game and the positives of a game without having to distill it to a score. So don't get mad at me when I'm looking at this and saying, well, a 97? So like Super Mario Galaxy? Like, and then people are mad at me for saying, well, you're comparing these apples and oranges. And I'm like, but this is how you've chosen to put them in order. It's like when someone asks me, what is your favorite album of all time? I'm like, well, I always say my answer will probably be different depending on the day you ask me.
Yeah.
And if I gave like my 10 favorite albums scores, I guess they'd all get 10 or whatever. But the reality is that I'm not sure what my favorite album is. I'm not sure what my favorite video game is. I say Mega Man 3 as a default, but the reality is I have no fucking idea. And putting the games in this order is destructive to criticism. It's destructive to rational games criticism, I think, in terms of, to Christopher's point, taking into account the patch or lack thereof with a lot of games. It's a distraction. And I feel like that needs to be reiterated, because I think a lot of people are, I'm poking fun at the 97. I think most people got that. But I'm more saying, how can games of these disparate technical qualities all be considered the same unless there's a specific subjective element to this? And if there is, then why are we putting numbers on them? Numbers are objective. 97 is a objective number on a scale. It's not a feeling of subjectivity. And that's why I hate Game of the Year. I mean, this should be predictable for people at this point. I don't get it. And so I said I would consider my borderline unhinged rant last week to be rather on target. I think maybe it required more clarification, but I've said many times, I mean, how much more open can I be? I'm like, I regret the way I reviewed some games. I regret the scores I gave some games. Because I probably shouldn't have been in those positions to begin with, to have to put such a fine point on it instead of just saying, I like this, or I love this, and this is a troubling, and this is good, and this is bad. And I don't know. I just, so I'm making fun of the environment in which a game can be earnestly a 97 on Metacritic and have all of these people complaining about it. Sorry, I didn't put the game in that position. So I'm just observing and then reacting. That's it. I believe it's great. And in fact, I wanted to continue with Edwin Castillo, who wrote in and said, hello, come boys. I'm here to contend something that we've just taken for granted as truth for long enough on Sacred Symbols. We've all kind of accepted that Chris is probably the best gamer out of the three of you, but with the amount of tilt that Chris experienced with Elden Ring, that would make any planet in our solar system blush. It might mean that we've been sleeping on our round-headed baby boy as the true heir to the top gamer seat. Discuss why you may have chosen the wrong favorite child, Colin. I didn't choose the wrong favorite child because, like any parent, I always think the oldest is my favorite, right? So, and Chris, of course, has been on the show the longest. But to that end and to that point, I do want to say that if anything about the conversation about Elden Ring has turned me off to playing it, it's the perceived difficulty of it. I was reading that it gets like really hard. And I don't want to play a game where I don't know that I'm going to be able to beat it without serious issues. It's just not fun to me. It's very tempting. I love open world games, so it's very tempting. And I also really love Bloodborne. I think that game's awesome. But I am concerned about my lack of skill translating to this. I don't think there's any question that I am the least skilled gamer on this show. I will say that openly. I think I would house some people in 2D games, but I just don't think a lot of people play 2D games anymore. This probably won't surprise any of you, but I'm the kind of guy that washes his face with bar soap. It is what it is. I never really gave it too much thought, actually. I have no problem with the finer points of skincare, mind you, I just never really cared. So when I had the opportunity to try Curology, I was interested in what it would be like. And the reality is, I noticed the difference between using their products and using, say, a gold bar of Dial and the lotion I started using because I got tattoos 19 years ago. It's stark, actually. So here's the rub. Curology is the way to go if you want ultra easy skincare that's actually made for your skin. You'll get a custom prescription cream made for you by a dermatology provider for your specific goals, whether that's tackling acne, clogged pores, skin texture, dark spots, fine lines, or something else. You start by taking a short online quiz, and if it's a good fit, they'll ship your formula right to your door. Well, I took that quiz, and it was indeed easy. In my subsequent package came 3 items: my prescription facial application to be applied before bed, as well as 2 blue tubes, one with cleanser and the other with moisturizer. Working in tandem, these 3 products made my face literally feel cleaner, like not only for me, the person, but to touch too. And it's all quite coherent to use, which is nice, because it can be hard to segue from slopping body wash onto a year-old shower sponge and hoping for the best. And yet here we are, another satisfied Curology user. Curology convinced me not to get stuck in my old static ways. Change can be good, especially when it's a positive change with your skin. If you're interested in following a similar track, get started with Curology just like I did with a free 30-day trial at Curology.com/sacred. That's CUROLOGY.com/SACRED. Just pay $5 for shipping and handling. That's Curology.com/sacred to start your free 30-day trial. Cancel anytime. Prescription subject to consultation. So, Dustin, do you think you've been underestimated in your skill level?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Chris is good at certain types of games, and I'm good at certain types of games. Chris could probably destroy me at any FPS game out there, like no doubt. And specifically with Elden Ring recently, I spent the last year replaying all of From Software's games, so that muscle memory is very fresh in my mind. If I took, I don't know, even 6 months not playing them, then I probably would be also not so hot. And it would take some time to just get used to that. But I respect the, trying to put some respect on my name, but it's not necessary overall.
Chris, do you think you've been underestimated or overestimated?
I mean, probably. If the idea is that he's amazing at every single game he plays, then yeah, that's insane. I can't play Guitar Hero for shit. But I think, like, I don't know, this is a game like FromSoft games in general. It's more of an interest thing to me. Like, a lot of them tend to not hold my interest, and I think the ones that coincidentally do are the only 2 with jump buttons, because it just I don't know what it is. It's something about that. It's like, okay, I can move around now.
Right.
Like, if I can't jump, I feel like I can't move. I don't know what it is. So I think it's the lack of just the presence of that mechanic alone just makes me a lot more comfortable, like, getting into the throes of a game like Elden Ring and getting into the throes of a game like Sekiro enough to really push myself past that difficulty. I was definitely getting tilted at this one boss that I was like way too underleveled to be fighting. But I also am intentionally kind of making my character. I'm a shirtless samurai with a katana right now. Like, that is not going to do a lot for like rock creatures or dragons, but it feels like I'm playing Sekiro again, but in an open world medieval realm, and it's awesome. And it's gonna be a little bit harder, especially if I'm not relying on summons, because I made that rule for myself. I'm not doing summons. So I'm artificially inflating the difficulty on my own head, which is probably leading to a kind of a worse experience technically when it comes to the boss battles. But I'll say, man, but that's the thing. It's like, I saw a little bit of contention about this on Twitter too, where like the idea was that, oh, this is not the most approachable FromSoft game. I don't know what you're smoking if you think this isn't. I can't imagine how you could possibly think Sekiro or Dark Souls or Demon Souls is more approachable than this. It just isn't. The fact that you can be in the middle of a boss fight and be like, this is too hard, I'm going to bail and do a million other things to farm for the experience I need or the smithing stones I need, as opposed to going through the same linear hallway 2,000 times. Like, that's not going to hold people's interest in comparison to this, which lets you do anything. I don't know. I love this. I love Elden Ring so much. I can't get over it.
Well, I'm glad you guys are enjoying
But I'm also
it.
playing. But I'm also playing other things.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What else are you playing? Let's talk about Destiny 2.
Yeah, we'll briefly touch on Destiny because I want to get to Horizon because I've been playing that a lot lately too. But I finished Destiny 2's Witch Queen campaign. It's their newest expansion, and it's also fantastic. It is the best Destiny campaign that Bungie has ever produced. Arguably, I think it even contends with some of Bungie's original Halo titles. It is just super, super good. It's super well designed. There's a legendary campaign mode that is really rewarding. I was getting more tilted in Destiny 2 than I was on Elden Ring. And it's just really, really solid. The new weapon crafting mechanics make it feel like way more of an RPG than it ever has before. The new glaive is just really satisfying to use, especially once you get artifacts for it to really buff it and allow you to suppress people with it and do that awesome 3-hit melee combo. The PvP is still in a bad spot because they haven't updated it in 10 years. But that single player experience, it's honestly to the point now where I can safely say, hey, if you've been thinking about getting into Destiny, this is probably a good time to do it. Because I've talked a lot about how unapproachable that game is. There's a lot of lore to kind of fill up on. There's a lot of mechanics to learn. There's a lot of currencies to figure out. There's a lot of RPG mechanics to juggle with and maintain and kind of keep in the back of your mind. But the biggest problem in recommending that deep of a system is that it doesn't have a single player experience that's strong enough to pull a new player through that. And I think this is the first time where I think that's not been true. I think that this is one of those campaigns where even if you don't know everything that's going on, and you likely won't, this is year 5 of a sequel. You know, you're probably going to be a little lost jumping into season 7 of a show that you can't watch the last 7 seasons of. But the story is really, really well done, really, really well presented, and just really fun to take part in, to the point where even if you are lost, I think you'll be able to get something out of it. So I would say I would highly recommend Witch Queen to anybody who's been curious. It's super, super good. It's Bungie at their peak again, and it just has me like really, really excited about what the future holds for this game because I've never been more into it than I am right now. And obviously, in addition to that, I've been playing Horizon along with you, Colin.
Yes.
And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a great deal. But I've also been kind of mainlining the story a little bit more than kind of going through the open world because this is the gorilla curse. they just release open world games like a day or two before like these groundbreaking, earth-shattering breakthroughs in the genre, and I just going back and forth between Elden Ring and this, I do notice that while the open world is good, it's definitely a serviceable open world. There's nothing wrong with it. It's totally good. But I do feel that overwhelming nature. I do feel that, oh my God, there's so many icons on my map. There's so many people to talk to. There's so many side quests. There's so much story happening, and I don't know what to pay attention to, and my eyes just glaze over. But I'm enjoying the main story a lot, and it's really satisfying. It's finally getting to a point for me where I'm like, okay, I'm really like invested in these characters and what they're doing. The environment is starting to change for me too, so I'm getting a nice new scenery in it. I think I'm like maybe like I'm not super far in. I think I'm maybe 10 hours in or something like that. But I gotta say, man, the thing that shines in this game is the combat for me. It's just like I'm having so much fun. Yeah, and the boss fights are really fun too. Like I just the most recent one I did was there's one in this I don't know if I want to spoil it, but it's in this kind of big facility. It's like an indoor thing, and it's this big triceratops thing. And it was just really, really satisfying to fight, just shooting the horns off and like watching the robots come apart as you fight them is just really satisfying. It reminds me a lot of like of Doom Eternal, how they added that demon damage thing where you see their rib cage fly out, right. And it's just like this gratuitous nonsense. And if you think about it, it's really violent, but because it's robots, it's fine. But like the dude's face is falling off. It's kind of dire. But it's really visceral. It's really satisfying. I've gotten myself upgraded to a point where I'm like specializing in bows. I can knock 3 arrows at once
Oh,
and
sick.
just ping for like insane damage, and it's really, really cool. I haven't really done any of the overriding thing. I don't know, like the I haven't put anything into that because I don't know, like I don't know if I care to ride around on a deer, you know. But it's really good. I highly recommend it. I think if you have a PlayStation 5 and you're not playing this, I think you're out of your fucking mind because it's gorgeous and the combat is fantastic. And I don't know how you're feeling about it, but I assume it's not that different.
It's not. I first of all, the game does shine, I think, most with the combat. It's just so fun to play. And I remember being at E3 and playing Zero Dawn for the first time, I think in 2016, and just being shocked. I was like, this is exactly how I want a game to feel in third person action. This is exactly the way I want it to feel. It's a little bit floaty. It's a little bit fast. I like how you can slow down time. It's actually hurting my hand a little bit playing it on the PS5 controller because of the haptics and like pushing the button down, like really pushing it down, and then the way you have to constantly slow down time is just doing something weird to my hand, my arthritic old man hands. But I'm really feeling it. I think when I see, my honest take is when I see of someone criticizing Horizon as generic or whatever the case might be, my argument is I just don't think you like open world games then, and that's okay. But what open world game is better than this? I mean, we were talking about Elden Ring. I can't speak to that. But in terms of your traditional, let's say, Ubisoft style, Sony style open worlds, like what is better than this? I can't think of a game. I can't think of a game better than this. Now, I like my first person shooters in open worlds. I like a lot of other things, but just that third person arrow knocking and just piercing pieces. Like I really started getting into it where the robot or the dinosaur fire hurts it. So you just launch fire arrows into it and then it bursts into flames. Then you switch back to your other arrows and start as it's getting latent damage, just knocking components off of it. There's something so satisfying. It's actually somewhat sad sometimes when you attack the more, what I would call the more herbivore type robots, like the stag deer and stuff, where they're trying to get away and they're staggering and you're just murdering them as they're like trying to escape. Almost as if they're living beings. I will say the story I think the story's awesome. And I can't actually believe where the story goes. I had no idea that I was curious. I was like, what the fuck is this game going to be about? But it's about, you'll never guess. I mean, you'll never guess what it's about. And I think that's really fun. And you'll never guess because it's impossible to guess. I don't know how anyone would have guessed what truly is going on. And there was a moment in the main game last night I was playing, I will not spoil it, but where I was like, what? That is it. There have been multiple moments where I've remarked aloud, oh, that's so cool, and different story twists, meeting characters. But there was a moment yesterday I was like, that is so cool. And it opened up my whole mind to where Horizon could go. I started thinking about Call of the Mountain or whatever it's called on the PSVR 2. And we were wondering when that was announced, well, how is it going to be not about Aloy? How is it not going to be about? I'm like, oh my God. Well, now you have once you're deep into the game, you have a pretty good idea of what it could be about, and what other Horizon games can be about too, and what this universe can turn into. For me, I'm playing it very, very finely. I'm 38 hours in, 46% completion. And I'm just trying to climb tall necks. I'm trying to grab security drones. I'm doing side quests that pop up. I'm doing errands and going to the battle arenas and the different hunting grounds and the old world ruins. And what I really like about the game is, though it is dense, like Chris said, I personally feel like it's meaningful in its density. And indeed, the assassin AK-47 wrote in and said, hello, fellas. This question is for Colin. Last week, Colin said Horizon Forbidden West was the most alive open world he has played so far. He said the same thing about Red Dead Redemption 2 when it came out. So my question is, does he think Horizon Forbidden West is a better open world than Red Dead 2 after spending more time with Horizon? We'd love to hear Chris and Dustin's input on this as well. Thank you guys. Keep being the best gaming podcast of all time. My opinion on this is that Horizon Forbidden West open world is superior to Red Dead Redemption. The gameplay is certainly superior to Red Dead Redemption. However, characterization, acting, those kinds of things, definitely better in Red Dead Redemption 2. Story is so compelling in Red Dead Redemption 2. You can't fuck with that game in terms of the things it does right. But still, it is a
Yeah.
Rockstar game. It just doesn't play very well. It just doesn't. I fantasize about a game that feels like Horizon, but looks and sounds like John Marston and all these guys from Red Dead. So there is a bit of a comparison to be drawn there. But I think what I'm impressed with, first of all, Forbidden West is definitely bigger. I can't.
Yeah.
I think it took me 70 hours to do Red Dead Redemption 2. I didn't do everything, but I was pretty thorough in the game. Excuse me. Whoa, had a little Brady moment there.
Oh.
I was pretty thorough. I haven't even seen. If you look at the open world of Horizon, it's kind of in 3 segments, I would say. And I'm like fully exploring, or in the process of fully exploring, what I would say is that second segment. And I've been told what is in the third segment, and we'll be going there for the story. I think I'm probably in the last third of the story at this point. But I have no interest in rushing forward, especially because there's so many interesting things. And I think what this game does well is what Red Dead did well too, which is just felt like things were meaningful. Remember there was that awesome Red Dead Redemption 2 side quest arc about the paleontologist? Like shit like that, where and how they're just like digging up, like I feel like there's meaning and spirit and life in those 2 games. And those might be the things that they share, because as much as I love The Division or something like that, I mean, The Division's world is not alive at all compared to these things. You know,
it's a level.
It's very, now it's urban and it's different, but Dying Light, the original, might be a better example where I don't feel that is a great open world. It's fun, but it's made to parkour and jump around. It's not made to explore, and it doesn't have life like that. So, how do you feel about the open world, Chris? Are you I know you said you're rushing through it, but you don't feel tantalized by all that's going on around you? That's surprising to me. I know a lot of people did mainline it, but I feel like that, I hate to say it like this, but I don't feel like the game is really intended to be played like that. You know?
Yeah, that's probably true. I think the thing that bothers me is just it's really hard to play 2 open world games at once and not feel really, because Elden Ring's open world is just really captivating because it doesn't have all those Ubisoft markers, and I think because this game does have that, I'm just less I'm less enthralled by these like side objectives and side characters to meet and other things to do. I had this moment earlier too where I was kind of looting things to kind of fill up on supplies and make sure I had enough healing stuff, make sure I had enough sparks to make like electric traps and stuff. And I was thinking to myself, damn it, Aloy, like she kneels down to pick up everything, and there's so much stuff to pick up, and it's weird because that didn't bother me in Red Dead 2, because Red Dead 2 like really committed to that. Like if you were rummaging through a cabinet, you were rummaging through a cabinet. It took a while. When you were skinning an animal, it took a while. When you walked into, even when you just did something as simple as like walking through like a saloon door, you know, like everything, that game takes its time because it's made. And I feel like Red Dead Redemption 2 is almost an immersive sim in some capacity, because it really is more about selling the reality that you are a cowboy than it is about being a fun cowboy themed video game. And with a game like Horizon, where you're sliding on your knees uphill for like 40 feet, it kind of bothers me that they decided to just do this weird thing, when in Breath of the Wild and in Elden Ring, if you want to loot something, you just walk over it and you press triangle and you pick it up. There's no animation for it. And little things like that just sort of, I don't know, there are things that catch my interest, like the tall necks, and there are areas that I'll deviate when I see something that is expressly interesting. But a lot of the times, if there's like in the villages, if there's like a side quest in a village, I'm not going to do it, because I've only done 2 of them so far, and in my opinion, the writing divide in between the main story and the side quests feels a little bit big. I don't know what it is about the side quests in Horizon, but they feel like Marvel wrote them or something. There's something about it that like doesn't connect with the main story that's actually like well paced and like dialogue is delivered. And I guess it's because they're meant to be digestible and kind of repeatable. And I guess I understand that that's kind of part of the design, but I don't know if that's what I wanted in my open world games now. Like, I don't want to have conversations with random people who may or may not be interesting, or may not be annoying, or may not give me a weapon. I like the experience of kind of happening across a cave and just seeing what the fuck is in there, and fighting enemies in the open world, and that's fun to me. It's just the busy work to me. I'm just tired of that aspect of open worlds in general. So Horizon being as good as it is in every other aspect isn't going to necessarily make me want to do the things I hate in Horizon, because ultimately I'm having a really good time with how I'm playing the game right now, and I don't want to make that worse doing things I know I won't like to do. I don't even like doing that shit in games that I really, really enjoy. Even in Red Dead, like sometimes I would go do like a specific side quest, but what was that guy the loan shark guy? Who was like in charge of, he would send you off to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Like beat people up and shake them down and shit.
Yeah. I liked some of those missions, but like after a while, I was like, I'm not doing this shit for you no more. Like, like that. But the only reason to do those missions were to have those moments with the characters, though. It was very, very story driven, and I feel like the side missions in this game don't really have that as much, because they come and they go. It's just, it's a very tried and true method, but the rest of the game is so good that I don't feel like I need that extra thing. Like just fighting the robots in the wild is fun enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm having a great time. It's so good. This has been such a good month for video games. I can't even believe it.
Indeed, man.
This is a ridiculous February.
Yeah, I think I might have a question about that later. I don't know, but yeah, with Sifu, Elden Ring, Horizon, it's
Dying Light,
of course. I will say this about the side quests in the game that I enjoy. I guess it's a small spoiler, but I don't think it's really anything consequential. I like how the game deals with social issues that you would expect these games to deal with, and usually they'd be eye roll. You'd be like, oh my god, it's like a fucking there's an arc about a gay couple, and there's an arc about whatever. But what I like about this is that, for instance, there's a reference to a trans person, like a trans warrior in one of these tribes, and you're dealing with this other thing, and this person is a companion of yours in this mission, and you say something like, this person is crazy, and he or she, I don't know what the pronouns are, but she presents as a woman. She says, I don't like that word. When I decided to wear male armor, people called me crazy. And that was it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, we're acknowledging that there's more nuance to your character. We're not going to hit people over the head with it. There was another side quest with this male gay couple, but they don't ever say it. And they kind of present them almost like the old style gays. Like we talk about in my family, it was my mom's cousin, Vito had, he had a roommate named Lindy, and they lived together for decades, right? And everyone knew, but that's how it was presented in the 70s or whatever. Was that like and it was kind of presented like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like there's nuance and texture, but they don't need to beat you over the head with it. And as far as, and I said this last week, but I like the racial representation. I feel like the game is incredibly black, as I said last week, which I find, I just think is really interesting. Like there's just a lot of black people specifically in this game, and they don't make mention of that. And it's very Battlestar Galactica-like, and just the sexes seem kind of like you can be a male or a female and you can do whatever. You can be a tinkerer or a warrior or whatever. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. I think the one thing that I find fascinating is, and what I think really dulls and mutes, if not just totally blunts the takeover of the different iconography of Indian iconography and all of these things, and cultural appropriation and all of that, is they're appropriating like everything in this game. The deeper you get into it, the deeper you realize, oh, there's a lot of like South American representation, Roman representation, Phoenician and Egyptian type representation, just in the armor they wear and the armaments, the tattoos and all of this. And so I think they did a nice job of breaking out of that, that more American Indian only style, because American Indians were not the only people that wore feathers or fucking furs and shit. It's like, so to try to claim that as your own is silly, but they did a really nice job of changing it up. So I think the game is quite fantastic. Gene Park, who is a critic, or not a critic, but a writer at Washington Post who covers video games.
Oh yeah.
I saw him post about Gran Turismo 7, and he said something that I feel about Horizon, and he said something along the lines of, Gran Turismo 7 is the type of game that really only Sony achieves as far as its high quality. Like it's just, there's something about it that's just of a higher quality. And I feel that way about Horizon. I said last week, and I've noted many times that Sony has, just like Microsoft and just like Nintendo, have the advantage of dumping more money into their games because they can make more money out of them just at the point of sale. And those games tend to sell more. So with that extra investment in time and money comes something extra special. And I feel like Horizon is almost the type of game that another company simply cannot make. Like, I just don't think that it can be done like this outside of first party and second party, because I don't think a lot of companies have the reasonable money or means or time to do a Horizon, you know? And it's what Dustin said with Elden Ring. Like, if that game went into, Sekiro came out several years ago. If those went into production at the same time, that's a huge sacrifice that they had to make. So yeah, I give Horizon huge shout out. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But I did want to note, to be fair, that I have had a couple of interesting problems with it that have cropped up since the last time. Number one is that I had a quest issue where a quest was broken, and thankfully I looked it up and there was a way to like trick the game into accepting the quest. It's this thing where you have to like go gather these items, and then the person who gave you the quest doesn't recognize that you have the items, and I was pissed off about that. That's just totally unacceptable. And then I had this really weird issue where, and I don't know if it was I guess these issues might be related, but Mike has been playing it on my PS5 as well. And when she would play the game and then not shut it down, I guess this is reasonable expectation, but maybe not, is that when I would go in to play the game, my PS5 would just lock. You have to go and like hard shut it off and turn it on again. So that was weird. And then yesterday I was in the middle of this like epic fight and my controller just started acting wonky. And I very rarely, if ever, have controller issues. Mostly like when people have drift and stuff, I feel like that's something that happens, but I also feel like people don't treat their controllers well and aren't careful with them and stuff. And I think that contributes to it too. So I've never really had issues with drift, and I don't even really know what it feels like. And so my controller started acting wonky, and I was like, is this what drift is? But then everything was slowed down and all fucked up and not operating correctly. And I had to shut the game and the console down and restart it to make my controller work again. And I don't know if it's weird, because like for the first time ever in PlayStation, DualSense has its own firmware now and like a deeper independent operating system of some sort, I guess. And maybe that's a problem, but it was just so weird and sucked because I didn't want to shut the game off because I was in this moment. So I was playing this gimped version of the game for like 20 minutes. And I had to shut that out because it not all is perfect.
Yeah.
I saw there's a patch out as of a day ago on the Reddit. And so maybe that fixes some of those issues. But I did see, and I wanted to ask you guys, the number one top rated comment is about a patch note that says Aloy won't mention her stash quite as often. Apparently that's something that's been bothering people. I mean, in the amount of time, I think I put like 10 hours or so, 10 to 15 around that before Elden Ring. But I didn't notice that in my time overall, at least it being too grating. Has that been a
I
thing?
guess I didn't notice that either. She does say it a lot, but it didn't really bother me. I just assumed because I was picking up so many things and I have just so many items, there's no need for me to even be picking anything up anymore. But
yeah, I've had one really annoying voice related bug where like she says, I can't remember exactly what it was, but every time the screen fades in from a cutscene or anything, she'll go, "Gotta grab that longhorn," or whatever, and I already have it. Like I got it. Like there's no reason, but it's been like a couple hours, and like every time it comes in from a fade in cutscene, it's like I gotta grab that longhorn, or like it's something. I gotta grab that thing that I already got like 5 hours ago. I'm like, what do you want me to do it again? Like it's not what the quest says. Like I have all I need. Like what are you doing?
right.
And the hair thing is still there, and like there's some problems with it. It's not like a perfect, I've noticed some pretty weird popping. Like I remember, like I was walking up to a village and it popped in front of me. I was like, "The holy shit!" But that's like pretty rare. That's like the only time that's happened. So it's a fairly stable game.
It is
solid on its frame rate too, which is nice.
Yes, and I know some people have. I know Dustin had mentioned like issues not with the resolution, but the kind of graininess. I'm not really seeing it personally, but
it kind of goes away once you can kind of tune it out. But it's just when you really look for it, you can see it. But that's kind of with anything.
That's the on this patch notes on Reddit from Gorilla. The number one thing that they list as a known issue is investigate several graphical issues reported by players regarding shimmering, sharpening, and screen saturation when moving the camera. So they're working on it. I'm sure that they'll figure out something for it, but
Yeah, it doesn't compromise the experience in
No.
any meaningful ways, though.
Okay, well, Horizon and Elden Ring will both get their own Sacred Symbols Plus episodes in the coming weeks, where we'll dive deep and spoil the shit out of them and review them and discuss them. And I'm looking forward to doing that. Elden Ring, I obviously won't be on, but these guys will probably be on it, and maybe we'll get Maddie on it as well. I don't know, is Cog playing it? I have no idea. And then Horizon will cobble together some people as well for that, and we'll continue to have those conversations. In a world plagued by financial illiteracy and the wreckage that can leave behind, it's vital that you get yourself and your finances sorted out, organized, and maintained. And a great way to do that, indeed arguably the fundamental pillar of financial coherence, is having a bank account. And while you can get all sorts of deeper and more sophisticated banking done at megabanks X, Y, and Z, the reality is that most people need only a bank account and a debit card. With those two things, you can begin interacting with the world beyond cash. And for many of you, Chime may be a great option. Chime is an award-winning banking app and debit card, and its appeal is obvious. It has no overdraft, foreign transaction, or service fees. In fact, it doesn't even have a monthly fee. This is probably why more than 10 million people use and trust Chime, granting fee-free access to 60,000 ATMs across the land in convenient locations like 7-Eleven and Walgreens. Better yet, you can send money to anyone, even if they're not on Chime, so you're not limited to only interacting financially with other Chime customers. The world, as they say, is your oyster. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Money is important. Earning it, saving it, spending it wisely, and making sure it's in good hands. These are more than check marks. They're essentials. So get yourself and your financial life in order with Chime. Make your first good decision of the new year and join over 10 million people using Chime. Sign up only takes 2 minutes, and it doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/sacred. That's chime.com/sacred. chime.com/SACRED. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Get fee-free transactions at any MoneyPass ATM in a 7-Eleven location and at any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. Otherwise, out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply. Sometimes pay anyone instant transfers can be delayed. The recipient must use a valid debit card or be a Chime member to claim funds. All right, let's get into the news. Number 1. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has serious ramifications for world peace and the safety and security of the local populations alike. But for the purposes of our show, there are reverberations to be felt in the gaming industry. Perhaps most visible is the plight of GSC Game World, located in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. GSC Game World is the studio known for Stalker and is currently working on Stalker 2, which is set for a timed exclusive release on Xbox Series S and X, as well as PC, before coming to PlayStation 5 a few months later. In a video posted to their social media feeds, the team revealed what it is likely obvious to all: they are MIA for the time being as they deal with a very serious situation in their lives. The game's development will be picked up when it's safe to do so, but will obviously be delayed indefinitely in the meantime. Meanwhile, a smaller game, Little Orpheus, from British studio The Chinese Room, people will remember The Chinese Room, of course, for Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, has also been delayed. This is more eminently meaningful, however, as Little Orpheus was supposed to be out the week it was indefinitely delayed. Why? According to a story on GamesIndustry.biz, the game's publisher, Secret Mode, noted in part, quote, "While Little Orpheus was originally released on Apple Arcade in June 2020 and does not directly reference recent world events, we recognize some of the game's themes and content may be upsetting to players at this time," end quote. The Soviet Union in particular is referenced often in the game. And drastically, renowned sports publisher and developer Electronic Arts is taking the drastic step of removing the Russian national team and all Russian club teams from both FIFA 22, the soccer game, and NHL 22, the hockey game. As relayed by website Video Games Chronicle, EA makes note of the decisions made by official bodies in the real life of the sports, particularly FIFA and UEFA on the soccer side and IAHF on the hockey side, which, among other things, have removed Russia's national team from World Cup contention and suspended the Russian and Belarusian national hockey teams. And finally, Ukrainian politician Mikhailo Fedorov, in a letter posted to his social media accounts, is calling directly on gaming companies to cease doing business in Russia altogether, writing in part, quote, "The armed forces and citizens are defending Ukraine until the end. The whole world is repelling the aggressor through the imposition of sanctions. The enemy must suffer significant losses, but we need your support. In 2022, modern technology is perhaps the best answer to the tanks, multiple rocket launchers, and missiles. I am sure that you will not only hear, but also do everything possible to protect Ukraine, Europe, and finally the entire democratic world from bloody authoritarian aggression. And I appeal to temporarily block all Russian and Belarusian accounts, temporarily stop the participation of Russian and Belarusian teams and gamers in all international esports events, and cancel all international events held on the territory of Russia and Belarus. We are sure that such actions will motivate the citizens of Russia to proactively stop the disgraceful military aggression, end quote. Okay. So there's much to be said about this issue, most of which will not be said here. We're not a political show, first and foremost. We'll talk about it as it's relevant to us, and I think it's relevant to us here because it's a big world event and it has implications with games. I did reach out to GSC Game World and had a brief conversation with them before the invasion of Ukraine by the Russians, and I felt, as I told my staff, that I felt like it would be glib to continue that conversation and they can worry about that later. Not that they would worry about it per se, but I just don't feel like I should be posing a distraction. As much as I'd love to talk to them about the situation in Kiev, I just feel like it's not productive and just too glib. Where I'm not David Engel from NBC on the ground or something. I'm not a real journalist. I don't feel like I should impose that on them. That said, I wanted to reach out to the audience and ask about this, and of course to Chris and Dustin as well, through this particular lens. Errant Rob wrote in, said, "Hey CCD, Sacred Symbols is clearly the only podcast I could hope to address my question because your insight will be thoughtful, articulate, and informed. On top of PlayStation and Xbox being asked by Ukrainian officials to suspend Russian accounts on their platform, EA has just announced it will remove Russian teams from FIFA and is looking into the same for NHL. We can all agree there is a lot going on politically and ethically with the conflict, but where does the line become blurred between actions of the government and the general population who consume media, not just in that country, but across the world?" Dustin, let's start with you. I'm curious what you make of this. I understand the imposition of sanctions. I have no real problem with economic sanctions. And of course, these people are free to ask other corporations to do what they might. But sanctions, we must understand, typically are withstood by oligarchical and rich people in societies and hurt the poor and middle classes the most. And going after the people in every conceivable way demonizes them, not the government and its actions. And so when I saw that FIFA, the real FIFA, is not allowing Russia to participate anymore in the World Cup qualifiers. To me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense, especially because FIFA is such a patriotic thing. If you watch FIFA World Cup matches, they're nuts. Who wants to celebrate Russia right now? But the reality is that within Russia, there are 150 million people or so, most of which don't want anything to do with this. And while we can say, like, you voted for this, I mean, did they? I don't know that any of us consider Russia anything more than a democratic painted autocracy. And so I'm concerned about rendering the entire population guilty and the adverse effect that could have on getting us all on the same page, because it makes them maybe feel targeted. I'm very dovish personally, so that's maybe plays into it, but I'm curious, Dustin, what you make of this entire situation.
Yeah, there is a big thing to be said about the Russian people versus the Russian government and whether or not choosing to continue to sell a game in Russia is really going to affect the war effort. To me, it doesn't really sound like it would make much of a difference. I mean, I guess if a game is taxed in Russia, then the government will make money off of that sale of a game, which in part does support them. But when look at like the Russian government and they're making all their money off gasoline, it kind of feels like pennies in comparison. So in some sense to me, hear me out fully on this. In some sense to me, it feels like a bit of a virtue signal, but at the same time, I think it is important for people to follow their conscience in these matters. For example, and I feel like this is somewhat related. There is a bar / pub here in Butler where the owner's grandparents are Ukrainian. And so they've made a big deal that they are no longer serving Russian spirits at all. And so I look at that situation. It was huge. It blew up on social media. The local news came in, interviewed them and stuff like that. And I was thinking about it and I thought, well, it's not really going to do anything. But at the same time, if I was in their position, I would want to do the same thing, in that this is one small way that I have control and can show my support. And so ultimately, I do think that that's a good thing. And so if you feel like shutting down your game being for sale in Russia feels like a way that you can support, and you feel like that's the right thing to do in your conscience, then I support you doing that. But ultimately, I think it would be probably better served to just donate money to, I don't know whether it's, I'm sure Red Cross or whatever, the established organizations that are helping people on the floor in the country, you know?
Yeah, it would almost do better to just sell Russian spirits and use the profits to kind of go to, you know what I mean? Like almost circumvent that by sending to the Red Cross.
Well, it's like here in Pennsylvania, I don't know if this is, I know it's specifically here in Pennsylvania. They pulled Russian spirits off of the liquor store because all of our liquor stores are state owned here. It sucks. And I'm thinking, like, our liquor stores already bought that liquor.
Right. Yeah, future
like,
purchases are more key. And like you said,
he's gonna save it. He's gonna save it until it's fine.
Exactly. I'm willing to bet that in liquor stores across Pennsylvania, there's just a shit ton of Russian vodka in the back room that it's getting dusty until they feel comfortable with this conflict is at a point where they can sell it again. It doesn't make any sense. But we're getting away from the point. Me specifically is getting away from the point with this. So I think it does make more sense in the FIFA situation, but then again, it's like, what really does it do? I don't know. I feel a lot of different ways about this.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of just agree with Dustin, where I think people should do whatever they feel showing support means to them, but if they think that it's doing anything beyond maybe boosting morale, if they think it's genuinely, like, if they think not selling Russian vodka that they already bought is actively putting a dent in the Russian war effort, like, I don't see how anybody could think that. Not that they're saying that they do think that. That's definitely some part of it where you think I'm helping in some way, and it's that's a little debatable. But I don't think there's anything wrong with showing your support in any way that you want. I think like the FIFA thing makes sense. I think banning the thing that confuses me about banning games specifically, you know, like suspending Russian accounts from PlayStation and Xbox, is, like you said, that just hurts your average consumer. Everybody it's not like it's hurting Putin. Putin's not playing FIFA, you know, on an Xbox. You know, he's that's not affecting anything really. It's just hurting the people who probably already don't support this war in the first place, who are then at home, not able to do something that they enjoy. But at the same time, maybe that does stoke something amongst their own people in defiance of their government. Maybe it's like, look at how our government's decisions is negatively impacting us, even on a leisure level now. Like, we can't even like relax with our video games anymore because our government went and did this. So maybe there actually is a meaningful tactic of like sowing dissent among people in Russia towards Putin. Like maybe that is a valid strategy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although one could argue, like, who the fuck is going to be so angry that they can't play a video game anymore that they're going to go take up arms? You know what I mean? It's a whole. This is a massive clusterfuck, and I'm not sure how any of it's really going to shake up. But show support in whatever way you can, as long as you're aware of the materialistic reality of what you're doing. I think it's fine. Like, don't self-aggrandize about it.
Right. I think. Exactly. And I think what Dustin said earlier is something I agree with too, which is, although difficult to say, true, which is that there is a level of virtue signaling here. No one, I don't want to say no one, but very few people cared or could even find Ukraine on a map a couple weeks ago. And I think the bigger thing I'm disturbed about in regard to this greater situation is just how quickly a combination of events, social media, government, media, and all of these kinds of things can just create something new. And we've seen that in the overwhelming reaction to this situation without really being curious about what's going on elsewhere in the world. And that to me seems totally selective. Because you ask, like, well, what's this going to get out of Russia and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if we really cared about the freedom and liberties of peoples and all of the rest, then why are we doing business in China? Well, the reason that we do business in China is because the cost is too great not to do business in China. But Russia means nothing in the grander scheme of things. 150 million people, the 13th, I think, biggest economy in the world, largely run on petrodollars. It's easy to beat the shit out of them, right or wrong, because there's no threat to your way of life like there would be with doing that to China. Meanwhile, China disappears people, has concentration camps and forced labor, slave camps, and all the rest. So I do think that there is a level of selective insertion when it seems like a lot of people seem to have no problems in our industry with all the horrible things that we've done around the world, you know? And I just wish that there was a more of a level of consistency against war, full stop. As opposed, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry to interrupt. I would push back slightly on that, only because I feel like with the China thing, specifically with the Hong Kong situation, there was a similar kind of bubbling up in social media circles and amongst a lot of even just gaming publications about the Hong Kong thing. So people do care about China. It's just a matter of just like people care about things when they hear about them. You know, that's really all there is to it, because not everybody is tuned into the world all the time, because God help you if you are. You're a sociopath probably if you in all likelihood if you're just like, hey, by the way, I woke up and now my day's immediately worse because I learned of all the atrocities that happened overnight in Bangladesh or whatever fucking other country that fucking exists. And I think, you know, it's just I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like I do think the most of the people who are talking about this do care, at least it's on some level. I think there is an obvious bad guy when it comes to a massive superpower invading a small country that does not want to be invaded, obviously. And I think it's a pretty clear-cut situation. And I think that's why you're seeing so much staunch support, because like I don't know how you could it would be weird not to have an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, maybe it's not without saying, because a lot of people are always looking for reasons to be upset, but surely there is an aggressor and surely there is a victim. My argument is simply one level deeper, which is the victims are on both sides. One side certainly didn't ask and doesn't deserve it, but let's remember the Russian military is conscript military. Those motherfuckers don't want to be there. They're not volunteers, or most of them are not. And you see the videos of them getting captured and crying and talking to their moms and not wanting to be there. A lot of these people have abandoned their posts, abandoned their gear, and tried to get away. And I was actually emailing with a friend of mine in Russia who lives in Moscow just to ask how he was doing. And he said to me, you know, our fear here is like we all of our savings is gone now. Like our money is worthless. And so will that convince them to react and do something about it and have some sort of like Caesar moment with Putin or something? I have no idea, but I just want to ensure that I'm so scared off of any sort of conflict or a growing conflict based on what we did in Iraq that I'm always just looking towards peace as a first thing. And one of the things I will say is I am very nervous about how quickly people seem to want to just be in war. And to that, I wanted to just bring this up. I want to just read this to people about my feelings. Dwight Eisenhower said this in 1961. And this was during his farewell address when JFK was becoming president. And he says the following. This is a famous portion of the speech, but I wanted to read it here. He says, "A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known by any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But now we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security more than the net income of all United States corporations. This conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper forever. That is deep stuff, and was predicted by a man that was born in the 19th century, that was responsible in a major way for defeating the Nazis, who became president of the United States, and who died later on, and saw a lot. And yet the tale hasn't changed. He predicted Vietnam would happen. It did. And ever since then, we've been in this war footing. And I hope that cooler heads can prevail no matter what other externalities are happening with our society. Let's hope that peace, prosperity, and love and mutual understanding can grow, because what I'm seeing in the population at large, and I don't know if anyone can deny this, is a 9/11 style turning up and ratcheting up of deep military conflict, the likes of which we have never seen in this world. And we're not dealing with a rational actor anymore. And that rational actor, or that irrational actor rather, has nuclear warheads galore. So everyone, chill. Let's give our best and our prayers and all of this to the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, and also to the Russian people, who I guarantee you don't want this. Let's remember about 5,000 of them have been disappeared, basically, for protesting already, arrested. Let's see where they end up.
No, 100%. I think I saw a tweet that summed it up pretty reasonably. I think rooting for Ukraine is fine. Just don't celebrate Russian casualty.
Right. Or don't root and say, like, why aren't we doing a no-fly zone over Ukraine? It's like, well, you want World War III?
No.
I mean, is that what you want? Because in my mind, like, we should be doing everything possible to escalate peace at all costs. And, props to the Biden administration and others around the world who are trying to do that and who tried to sound the signal and all of the rest. Just want everyone to remember this isn't a game. And this is serious stuff. And I think maybe we should ask ourselves why we care so much about this and not also about many of the other horrifying things that not only the American military, but other militaries around the world do to each other and to civilizations and societies, and maybe just wonder why it can't be different. And I truly believe it can be different, but I think we need salient, open-eyed leaders that believe in peace. And that's why I brought up Marianne M. Williamson before, and that's why I loved her during the Democratic primaries, even though she had no prayer, was because it was just interesting to hear someone talk about love and kindness, right? Like, that was her whole platform. And I'm like, that's not a rational platform for American politics, but it's nice to hear. And why can't that be part of the way we deal with each other? So shout out to everyone, all freedom loving peoples around the world. Stay safe out there. All right, number 2, and what can be only described as a pleasant surprise, upcoming timed PlayStation exclusive or PlayStation 5 exclusive game, Ghostwire Tokyo, has received a free prequel visual novel. Better yet, it's on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and it's available right this instant for no charge. It's called Ghostwire Tokyo Prelude, and it, quote, focuses on KK, a wizened detective investigating a mysterious phenomenon set roughly 6 months right before the events of Ghostwire Tokyo, end quote. The visual novel obviously is designed to introduce players to the world and concepts of the game and is described as having, quote, a more relaxed atmosphere, end quote, when compared to the horror-driven action game. Interestingly, the visual novel supports multiple playthroughs to uncover everything there is to be seen and should act as a nice lead up to Ghostwire Tokyo itself, which comes to PlayStation 5 on March 25th. As we know, Ghostwire Tokyo comes from Bethesda-owned Japanese developer Tango Gameworks, the team founded by Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami. The team has 2 games under its belt so far, the 2014 PS3 and PS4 game The Evil Within, and its 2017 sequel, which came only to PS4. Complicating issues, of course, is that in the interim, Bethesda, its teams, and its IP were all purchased by Microsoft, and so this, following Arcane's Deathloop, will be the final fruits of that deal. GameSimp wrote in and said, good evening, yokais. Did y'all have a chance to play Ghostwire Tokyo's visual novel, Prelude? After a long day of work, I decided to give it a try, and I must admit that it got me interested in the upcoming release. Assuming that the vibe of the Prelude extends to the main game, Ghostwire seems to offer a cool blend of X-Files and Japanese mythology that I did not expect. Do you all plan on picking this game up on release? If so, did the Prelude heighten your interest? Take care and watch out for those tortured spirit of that chicken. I will, GameSim. Thank you for writing in. Dustin, let's start with you. What did you think of this? First of all, they kind of announced this and released it. I really like this. I think this is a nice touch. I don't know that it's going to pay dividends for the game. I don't know if the game's going to be any good, but I like that they did this, although I didn't play it and I doubt I will. What are your thoughts? Did you check it out, etc.?
It's funny because somehow until I read these notes earlier today, I totally missed this. Like I didn't see anything about it on my Twitter or anything. So checking it out, though, it seems like a neat way to get people into the world and interested in it. Part of me, as someone who's interested in Ghostwire Tokyo, I almost don't want to play this. Like I don't know if I would want this to be the introduction to the game because I kind of want the actual intro of the game to be the intro, but I understand this is designed to do that. But it seems like a cool marketing tool if you like visual novels. It's kind of an interesting move because I understand that visual novels will appeal to people who like Japanese games like myself, but I don't know if this would appeal to a mass market for to get people satiated with what's going on. But I don't know. If it's free, maybe I will check it out. That game is coming up so soon. I can't believe it. I mean, I can't believe we're already in March. But the fact that it's almost here is crazy. And so I will I don't know if I'm picking up day one. This is a game that even after seeing that gameplay trailer, I thought it looked interesting, but I think I'll wait for reviews on this one just because I know a lot of people liked Evil Within 1 and 2, but neither one of those did very much for me. So I'm a little skeptical to just dive in.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I will play it just because I am curious and I want to have a good feeling about games that are coming to the platform, but I feel like they really could have done this game a service. I hate to say it, it's so predictable, but why doesn't this game have trophies? I'm not saying a platinum, but why doesn't this game have trophies? That's confusing and weird. You give trophies away to every Tom, Dick, and Harry garbage game on PSN, and you're not going to do that to your free-to-play accoutrement to your upcoming timed exclusive. It's a little strange. Chris, what did you think of this? Did you check it out? Are you going to check it out? Did you like the idea?
I think it's a good idea. It's not one that appeals to me personally. I'm not that big on visual novels. I think the closest I ever got was Ace Attorney. And that was the only one I even remotely enjoyed. So I'm probably not going to check this out. I do think it's a good idea in general, though, to kind of have this kind of almost I don't know, just a unique approach to getting people into the game. Like I know it's obviously the game's going to have its own intro, which should do its job well enough, but I do think this is probably a smart move, especially because it's free, because just getting enveloped in the world of something can do a lot for your ability to even go through it in the first place. Like that was the thing with me in The Witcher. Like I put The Witcher 3 down so many times until I saw the show, and then I watched the first season of the show and I was like, oh, I'm rooted in this world now. Kind of want to play The Witcher. And I played The Witcher 3 after that for a pretty long time, like way longer than I had played it before. before putting it down just because I got distracted by other things. But having like a prelude or a way to kind of get grounded in a world before you start something is a valuable asset, and I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I do think, like Dustin said, I think the reach of it is a little questionable, even with it being free. I don't know how popular visual novels are, especially one that's not even being advertised, because I didn't see it either. You'd think at least they would. You think at least you would hear something about a free game leading into a timed PlayStation exclusive release at some point, but this is the first time I've even heard of it, is reading the news on the document.
This episode of Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Coinbase. Cryptocurrency might feel like a secret or exclusive club, but Coinbase believes that everyone, everywhere, should be able to get in the door. Whether you've been trading for years or just getting started, Coinbase can help. Now, I don't consider myself any kind of expert or crypto bro or anything like that, but I do consider myself, let's just say, crypto curious. And if you've thought about entering the world of cryptocurrency, but maybe felt a little overwhelmed, Coinbase has made it really easy for me to check it out and buy and sell with ease. Coinbase offers a trusted and easy-to-use platform to buy, sell, and spend cryptocurrency. Millions of people in over 100 countries trust Coinbase with their digital assets. Whether you're looking to diversify, just getting started, or searching for a better way to access crypto markets, start here with Coinbase. And for a limited time, new users can get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up today at coinbase.com/sacred. Sign up at coinbase.com/sacred for $10 in free Bitcoin. The offer's only for a limited time, so be sure to sign up today. That's coinbase.com/sacred.
All right. Well, let's move on to number 3. The in development Twisted Metal television show we've talked about a few times on the show is no longer just in development. It's now in pre-production. Word comes by way of TV and film publication Variety, which notes that NBC-owned and affiliated streaming service Peacock has ordered a season of the show, and it's expected to launch sometime in 2023. Actor Anthony Mackie, perhaps best known for his role as Falcon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, will star in the show as John Doe, quote, a smart-ass milkman who talks as fast as he drives. With no memory of his past, John gets a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make his wish of finding community come true, but only if you can survive an onslaught of savage vehicular combat, end quote. Deadpool writers Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese came up with the show idea and will act as executive producers. It will be written and showrun by Michael Jonathan Smith, well known for his writing on the surprise hit Karate Kid series Cobra Kai. Comedian and actor Will Arnett in part helped get this project over the finish line and will also act as executive producer. Twisted Metal, which was a Western PS1 launch game in 1995, is a dormant first-party series. Sony hasn't released a game since the 2012 reboot on PS3. However, rumor is a new game is in development, apparently at none other than recent Sony first-party acquisition Firesprite, after apparently having been started at and subsequently stripped from Sony's second-party partner Lucid, the team behind Destruction All-Stars. Chris, I'll stick with you here with this one. I don't know that they can make this game sound any less appetizing or interesting, but I mean, that write-up sounds stupid, but clearly there is interest. I mean, Peacock... Now, everyone needs content. I'm not going to read into just the very green lighting of this as a sign that it's going to be good. People are just hungry to get things onto their streaming platforms. But following the Uncharted film, and that discussion between Dustin and I will go up soon, which was good, I thought. I mean, it wasn't great. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but it wasn't bad. I feel like maybe there's something more here to be excited about. And certainly the people involved in this in various ways have a lot of respect in their various places. I mean, Michael Jonathan Smith, Cobra Kai is perhaps one of the biggest surprises in recent memory in any media. When that show was announced, I'm like, no prayer does that have of doing anything. And people love it. Absolutely love that show. Yeah. So, and of course, Deadpool was very famous as well. So what do you make of this getting greenlit over at Peacock?
I don't think it means much. I don't think that the very green lining of it means much. I think we're in this weird era now where everything that exists has its own streaming. Fucking Adidas Plus probably has a streaming service or something where you can stream all sorts of shows with Adidas in them. It's a bit gimmicky at this point. Paramount Plus has that horrific Fairly Odd Parents live action sitcom that looks like cancer incarnate.
No good.
And, I just feel like people need content. They're throwing whatever the fuck they got at the wall to see what sticks. I get it, whatever. But I will say the names attached to this are kind of not bad. Like you said, the Cobra Kai writer is a pretty big deal. Deadpool writers, Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese, that's a pretty big deal too. Anthony Mackie's not a small actor. Will Arnett is also like pretty big on Netflix. He was a big part of obviously BoJack and stuff like that, and Arrested Development back in the day. I think this has potential to be good purely because Twisted Metal's expectations can't be particularly high. It's not like The Last of Us, where you're just like, oh my God, how is this going to possibly narratively compare to the Last of Us video game? That's a genuine concern, even for HBO, who I think could pull it off. But even then, it's like that's a tall order to make a show that's as narratively compelling as the Last of Us video game was, especially considering so much of what was compelling about the Last of Us was the fact that it was being done in a video game. But Twisted Metal, I think you could make a good show out of Twisted Metal. You can't take Twisted Metal super seriously, or maybe they do, and that's the joke. There's a lot you can do with that because it's such a bizarre IP. I almost look at it kind of like that Death Note show. You remember that Death Note movie that they did on Netflix that was so terrible? It was like a live action Death Note, which is such a shame because the very concept of a live action Death Note is awesome because all you need is the concept of the note. Like, oh, what if the book lands in Seattle? What if it lands in New York? What if it lands in, and then you have a whole bunch of other characters written off of that premise. And that seems like what they're doing here. It's just like, it's the premise of Twisted Metal, but it's not tied down by anything that might have been canon in the games or nothing. It's just, hey, here's a fucking guy and he's just in Twisted Metal. I think it sounds like it could be fun.
Yeah, I think,
or interesting.
Like, I don't know much about Twisted Metal, but I think John Doe is just the name of the person in the game. Obviously, that's obviously a placeholder name for crime and all of that too. And then they did say something when they were pitching it or shopping it that obviously Sweet Tooth's going to be in it and the ice cream truck and all of that, but not being bogged down by, first of all, whatever the story is, I don't remember. There was some live action shit. And I don't know, David, you're probably
there was some like some Calypso guy and a tournament. I don't know.
It was, so I don't know. They don't have to be tied down. If Uncharted didn't need to be tied down by a lot of its lore, then this certainly doesn't need to be. So
yeah,
Dustin, what do you say?
I think the biggest thing that makes me optimistic about this is having the Deadpool writers attached to it, because both of those movies are legitimately really funny and understand what type of movie a Deadpool movie needs to be. Not very serious, very breaking the fourth wall, stuff like that. They understood how to take that character, which already is totally out there as far as comics and stuff like that, and make it adapted to film. So that gives me hope that this could be done right. And I feel like, not to spoil our Uncharted spoiler cast that's coming soon, but maybe, I don't want to say we were dead wrong about Uncharted, but it was better than I expected, like by a lot. Again, like you said, Colin, it wasn't great. It didn't like totally change my way of thinking about video game movies, but I was somewhat surprised by it. And so I'm going to try to be more open-minded going forward. And it seems like this is where it starts, alongside with The Last of Us on HBO.
Indeed. And open-mindedness is the name of the game, I think. And I don't know if Uncharted taught me a lesson, because I don't think it's like great, but it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think that did a lot for me being interested in seeing more of what they can do. But we'll leave that for the spoiler cast that we did. All right, number 4. No one can deny that beloved Japanese publisher and developer Capcom is in a renaissance period. Indeed, apart from the best-selling game it has ever released, Monster Hunter World, are 3 games which are otherwise largely responsible for this trend. Resident Evil 7 launched in 2017, and the remakes of both Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, which launched in 2019 and 2020, respectively. Well, according to a brief posting on various Resident Evil social channels, those 3 Resident Evil games, natively released on PlayStation 4, are en route to PlayStation 5 with a trio of native releases. The 3 games will receive a series of PS5-centric boosts, including better frame rates, ray tracing, 3D audio, and DualSense support. And considering the PC version of the games are receiving these updates for free, it stands to reason that those who own the PS4 versions of any of these games will receive these updates free too. Resident Evil, which first came to PlayStation in 1996 and is known in Japan as Biohazard, is the most famous survival horror game series ever. The second and third games, which were both remade, came to PS1 in 1998 and 1999, respectively. Dustin, what do you think about this? I think this is wise. Resident Evil is just killing right now, I think, and pardon the pun. I think in some way, this is also a nice little tease for what's to come, because we know that there's likely a Resident Evil 4 remake project that is on the verge of being announced. And we kind of hypothesized on this very show, are we going to get a Resident Evil game of some sort this year? Because they've basically been active virtually every year since Resident Evil 7 came out, specifically in 19, 20, and 21, with 2 remake, which was awesome, 3 remake, which was very good, and 7, which I thought was very good as well. So what do you make of this, getting these new Resident Evil games out into the wild on our brand new consoles?
I'm extremely excited. I recently replayed through Resident Evil 7 right before the new one came out. So that one, while it's still great because it's a fantastic game and it gives more people a reason to jump in, I'm particularly excited about Resident Evil 2 and 3 just because I feel like I've majorly fucked up I've never even touched Resident Evil 3, the remake, but 2 I had started. I think someone had one of my friends let me borrow it or something like that, but I never finished that game, and it wasn't any detriment to the game. It just, I don't know, something else caught my attention at the time. And I've always thought that I've wanted to go back and play those 2, and this is just the perfect opportunity to do so. Really curious what they're going to do. I mean, I guess it's better frame rates, ray tracing, 3D audio, just because those games are already like really solid on PS4 as far as frame rate and resolution, but you can always take things further. I can't imagine, man, like a ray tracing, and that'll be cool. I'm very curious because, man, Capcom has just really done excellent work over the past, starting the PS4 generation forward. It's just been awesome. So I'm excited to see them give some shine to these games.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Chris, do you have anything to add about Resident Evil coming to PS5?
Nothing bad about better performance for old games. Always support it.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I will say that Resident Evil 2 remake, I like Resident Evil 3 remake. I don't think Resident Evil 3 itself is as good as Resident Evil 2, the original, but Resident Evil 2 remake was fucking awesome. I mean, that was awesome. Awesome stuff.
That is a special video game.
Highly recommended.
Sincerely.
Highly recommended. All right. Number 5. During last week's episode, we discussed the rather interesting inclusion of Shadow Warrior 3 into PlayStation Now's March library. This is notable, of course, because Shadow Warrior 3 is brand new and is therefore a day-and-date release on PS Now, the first of its kind in the AAA space. Now, we know more about what's coming in March aside from flying wild hogs, kinetic FPS, all thanks to a post on the official PlayStation blog. Though you should note that Shadow Warrior 3 itself is available on PS Now until July 4th. 3 other notable games join the Now ranks in March, starting with Crytek's Crysis Remastered, the 2020 PS4 re-release of the classic PC FPS from the same team that made the original Far Cry. Crysis itself first came to PlayStation in the form of the 2011 PS3 port. Joining Crysis Remastered is Relicta, a first-person puzzle game first launched in 2020 from studio Mighty Polygon. And then there's another 2020 release, the adventure game / visual novel Chicken Police Painted Red from developer The Wild Gentleman. PS Now, which has around 4 million subscribers, is PlayStation's streaming and back catalog solution for its customers, though it is widely expected to be supplemented or outright replaced by the mysterious Project Spartacus, which Sony has yet to publicly acknowledge. I looked into these games, these 2 games that we don't know anything about, obviously, and they both have excellent reviews on Steam for their PC releases. So they're apparently good games, but I don't know much more about them. I just wanted to acknowledge that PS Now is getting new games. Hopefully, in the next month or 2, we'll start learning more about Spartacus and how this all works. And then number 6, in an interesting and unexpected twist, EA published mini hit Knockout City isn't only going free to play, as we briefly discussed last week, it's also leaving Electronic Arts' stable entirely and is being relinquished to its home team for future self-publishing. Word comes by way of a post on EA's official website, which aims to go over all that the game seeks to celebrate as it approaches its first anniversary and its 6th season, which launches this spring. As we already know, beginning with Season 6, Knockout City will be free to play, though those who purchase the game in the year beforehand will receive the so-called Loyalty Bundle. But perhaps the bigger piece of news is that EA is letting Velan Studios, the team behind the game, to self-publish this new free-to-play iteration of the game. Here's what's written about this in part. Quote, "We couldn't have introduced Knockout City to the world without the incredible support of EA Originals, but now, as we switch to free-to-play, the natural next step is for us to take over publishing responsibilities and work even more closely with our community," end quote. Knockout City, which came to PS4 and PS5 in May of 2021, is Velan's second game. The upstate New York-based team is also responsible for the Switch-exclusive Mario Kart Live home circuit, which launched in 2020. Anthony Pallarino wrote in and said, "Howdy, folks. Not sure how much of a note this is, but wasn't mentioned last episode when talking about Knockout City going free-to-play, that Velan Studios is now self-publishing the title. They did not give specific details as to why. They did mention self-publishing will allow them to work more closely with the community. Is being an EA original game or team limiting the developers in some way?" Well, the reason we didn't mention it is because that wasn't announced until after we recorded the episode. But Chris, I'm curious what you think about this. I feel like there's something about this. So let me back up. Sony recently made a deal, as we know, because I interviewed Dylan Cuthbert about this on Sacred Symbols Plus, but made a deal with Q Games, and Q Games has reacquired the Tomorrow Children, which was kind of that aborted PS4 game that they tried, free-to-play game.
Yeah.
And this strikes me as a similar sort of deal where there might have been some buyout or some sort of agreement of revenue sharing. We don't really know, where EA was like, listen, we're shutting this game down and you can take it if you want. And I feel like that's probably what happened. I mean, I don't know for sure. It seems like they're really heavily supporting it with seasons, but if the game is lucrative, I have no idea why EA would walk away from it. Now, it's entirely possible as well that Velan Studios had the out to do this, but you don't see this with other EA originals. For instance, Hazelight's games, which are much more important to EA, are, to be fair, are not just walking away, and those are Game of the Year contending games. So it's a little bit strange. There's more to this than meets the eye. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a little bizarre that it's rare that a smaller studio can just leave a bigger publisher with their IP, even if that is an IP that's a little bit fledgling. Usually, publishers like to keep everything they have just so they have a mind for the future in case they want to revisit stuff. So it's interesting that they were able to leave with the IP, like with Knockout City and full publishing rights. The thing that's with me, it's like, yeah, maybe this game isn't super profitable, but maybe it isn't super profitable for EA. Like maybe it's one of those things where it's like it's almost like a not a Final Fantasy. What the hell is that Guardians of the Galaxy situation where like that game I'm sure sold really really well, but it still didn't meet Square's expectations. And I could see that being a similar thing here, where it's like the developers are like, we could sustain this. Like we're doing
Right.
well. Like we could make this work and we could grow this, but EA doesn't see the potential in it. Maybe we can work something out here, because I don't understand if you're a developer why. I mean, the developer knows more about the game than the publisher does. I would imagine. So like, why would you want to stick with a game that's doomed unless you saw potential promise in being able to independently steward it towards success? I don't know how successful Knockout City is. I mean, I'm not playing it. It's a solid little game, but like I don't know many people who are consistently playing it. So the popularity of it is questionable at best, and I'm curious as to how sustainable it actually is. But I mean, I wish them the best. They lucked out with this to leave with their IP intact. That's not a commonplace.
No,
occurrence.
I mean, of course, most famously it would be Destiny with Activision and Bungie, but small teams usually have no leverage, and maybe there could be so many things to speculate here. Maybe EA doesn't want to look like a bad guy shutting another game down. Maybe they'll feel like there'll be more. Yeah, that's. But the thing about going free to play is it's not about how many players you can court. It's about how many players you can court into buying things. And I don't know. That seems like a tough sell, but maybe this game is more popular than I think. Dustin, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add just some context, just some data, because I checked out the Steam charts for it. Peak players in the last month, 217.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Oof.
And in February it was 176. So hopefully I believe I'm looking at this data right overall. But yeah, not too promising when it comes to the longevity of the game. Clearly there's a a strong 200 people on PC that really like this game, but I don't know if that's a sustainable level of players. Obviously, that's just one platform, one vertical, but it is telling data to look at.
Indeed.
Yeah, maybe I could see it maybe coming to Game Pass at some point, maybe getting like a huge influx of players, and then maybe those free players will like spend money on the I could see maybe that being a part of the strategy, but that's entirely speculative. Like we don't know what the fuck's going on.
Number 7. As we've discussed on this show, there's what some might argue a 4th or 5th truly viable JRPG franchise bubbling here in the West. That series is Trails, which, in addition to old standbys Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, longtime undercard contender Tales, and critical smash hit Persona, is getting a lot of love outside of Japan, particularly since the release of the Trails of Cold Steel subseries, which came to Vita in the West in 2015 and PS4 itself in 2019. Trails of Cold Steel itself has 4 releases through 2020 across PlayStation platforms, though the greater Legend of Heroes franchise technically goes back to the 80s in Japan as a subseries to the Dragon Slayer franchise. We started receiving the games on PSP back around the handheld's launch, including the beloved Trails in the Sky, which saw a Western release on PSP in 2011. Anyway, yada yada yada, and Falcom's JRPG series has a growing following in the West. Good news then that Trails from Zero, promised for Western release, now has a release date. It comes to PlayStation 4 on September 27th later this year. Trails from Zero is a 2010 Japanese PSP release, which was ported to PS4 in Japan in 2020. It's a localization and translation of that port that we're receiving. And as we know, the re-releases won't stop there. Trails to Azure, launched on Japanese PSPs in 2011, Vita in 2014, and PS4 in 2020. It's coming to Western PS4s in 2023. 2 more Trails games are also en route in 2023, as we learned recently, in the form of 2020 Japanese PS4 game Trails into Reverie, and the PSP exclusive Japanese spin-off from 2012 called The Legend of Nayuta, Boundless Trails. Dustin, I wanted to throw this in here because there's something bubble in here. By the way, I predicted that game would reach this year, and it's on my 10 Metacritic game draft that we did. So we'll see how it does. It looks really cute. It's chibi, it's PSP, but I'm rooting for this series because I feel like we need a little something more. And what I think is so tantalizing about Trails compared to the other franchises I mentioned is that they just get more games out. And maybe it's because we haven't received so many of them that they just have a plethora of games to re-release here, which is exciting if you're a Trails fan. I really want to give this another go. And I'm wondering if it's tantalizing to you as a JRPG fan.
It is not tantalizing for me to dive back into the series, but I am glad to see more JRPG players in the space, just because that's another avenue for people to get interested into the genre, and more people playing the genre is good for everyone who's interested in it, just because that means bigger budgets or just more budgets in general for JRPGs. Which one was it? Trails of Cold Steel, right? That was the one that was the Vita. The one, yeah. To be fair, that is the only one I checked out. So maybe I should check out one of these other ones instead. It's a bit too tropey for me, but I don't know. It's totally subjective because some people probably think Persona in some ways is too tropey or whatever. But I know a lot of people that like this game. This game has or this series is just, the fan base is very, very dedicated, and they want to make sure that that they're dedicated, and that Trails of Cold Steel is not the first game in the series, which I'm glad. I was going to say it's very good that you mentioned that here in this write-up, because I'm sure we would have been told very quickly.
No.
But
Dragon Slayer and all the Trail, it goes back further than I even imagined or understand. Very similar to Shin Megami Tensei. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So congrats to those that are excited, because it seems like there's going to be many more Trails games to come.
Indeed.
Yeah. There's too many of you.
A lot of you.
Damn.
Too many of you weebs out there. The only Japanese RPG I care about is the Type 470mm AT rocket launcher.
Whoa.
Hey, hold on, Chris. I have a question for you. You referenced the Death Note movie earlier. Are you a fan of the Death Note anime?
I like the concept of it. I like the Death Note anime. Right. I like the Death Note anime. I like the Death Note anime up until like the last arc. Couple episodes of it, where it's just like, oh my god.
Okay, I wanted to clear that up because I didn't know. I was like, is this an anime that Chris enjoyed? Is it? I needed to know.
There were a handful.
Handful? Okay.
There were a handful.
All right.
All right, a couple more news items to get through. Number 8, in what could be construed as the true end of the PlayStation 3 era, Sony revealed that it is ceasing all official repair support for the console in the last country such a service was still available in, Japan. Word comes by way of website Video Games Chronicle, which relays a Japanese tweet which notes in part that all service requests for PS3 and related peripherals need to be submitted by early May. Now, this isn't for all PS3 consoles. The original 2 models haven't had support for several years. This is specifically for the 4300 model of PlayStation 3, known officially as the Super Slim, but known colloquially as the George Foreman grill. PlayStation 3, which launched in 2006, was followed by a cheaper so-called Slim model in 2009, while the grill came out in 2012 in the shadow of PlayStation 4's announcement in early 2013 and subsequent launch later that year. In a somewhat sad statement, Sony notes, quote, that repairs may not be possible before the end date due to the exhaustion of parts, end quote. PlayStation 3 ceased manufacture in 2017, having sold 87 plus million units. Generationally, it beat Microsoft's Xbox 360, launched in 2005, while it was beaten by Nintendo's Wii, launched within weeks of PS3 in late 2006. So, end of an era over there in Japan. And finally, number 9 is a wrap-up. The official PlayStation blog reports episodic stealth game Republic, which came to PS4 as one complete package in 2016, is en route to PS4 and PSVR imminently in the form of Republic Anniversary Edition. Website Push Square reports Pac-Man Collection Pac-Man Museum Plus comes to PS4 on May 27th, while long-in-development RPG Digimon Survive has had its 2022 release window reiterated via a new trailer and is still en route to PlayStation 4. That game has been in development forever. The website also reports that the upcoming PS4 port of one-time PS3 Arc System Works fighting game Persona 4 Arena Ultimax will receive much-needed rollback netcode when it launches on PS4 on March 17th. Website Video Games Chronicle relays word of Back 4 Blood's first DLC called Tunnels of Terror, which will launch on April 10th. The game has surpassed 10 million players since launch, which is not that impressive since it was on Game Pass. And finally, website Komatsu reports City Builder End Zone, A World Apart Survivor Edition comes to PS5 on May 19th. Action RPG Enclave HD comes to PS4 at some point this summer. And cartoonish title Cult of the Lamb comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point later in 2022. It's also been leaked since we started recording that Tom Henderson, games leaker, is saying Quantic Dream will need until 2027 or 2028 to get its Star Wars game out due to hiring issues at the studio. And as I said weeks ago, I think people are picking on Quantic Dream, but I had relayed word from industry sources saying that people are getting literally insane offers to go and stay at these studios, which is a major reason why Sony is spending $1 billion on retention bonuses at Bungie. Because I think I told you guys this. I had heard stories of people saying, like, we'll give you twice as much money as you make to come to the studio, twice as much. You're already making $150,000. Well, you make $300,000 and you come to us and you work from home. That's the kind of shit that's going on out there. And so if you have a bad reputation, which Quantic Dream does locally, then that's going to make that even worse for you. So we'll see what happens. I'm surprised Disney signed that deal with them without a team in place, but I'm still excited about it. I like Quantic Dream a lot. I like David Cage. Fuck all you haters. All right. As every episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast does, we end with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. Tradition dictates this. You can submit these inquiries over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. That is one of your many perks over there. So thank you for that. Walker Simmons wrote in and says, hey, Slitterheads. In the past, Colin has said that he didn't feel like the PS5 was a must-buy system due to the lack of games. Now that it's been a year and games like Demon's Souls, Returnal, Ratchet & Clank, Miles Morales, Kenna, Sifu, and Horizon are out with Gran Turismo and God of War coming soon, do you still have this opinion? I know most of those are crushed-in games, but as someone who owns a PS5, I can't imagine going back to the PS4 due to the much better performance, loading times, and awesome controller. As far as first years of consoles go, I feel like the PlayStation 5 has actually been pretty strong. Dustin, what do you think about what Walker says? Do you think that the PlayStation 5 is now a must-buy system?
Yeah, so just as a refresher, since some people may not have been listening as far back, I feel like the PS5 has been worthwhile for a large portion of players out there from the get-go, whether you cared about these games that Walker listed or whether you didn't, just because so many people play the service-based games, whether it's Warzone or Fortnite or even something like Destiny. You're going to have just a night and day better experience on a newer platform, particularly PS5. You're going to get better frame rates, better resolution, and even if you don't have a 4K TV, like just the frame rate jump, particularly with Destiny, This is a pain Chris and I know very well just from the years and years and years of playing Destiny on PS4. Was just horrendous, and it feels liberating, and it's great to see this generation focus so much on performance overall. So I would say yes, it is definitely I don't know, a must own. I guess yeah, it's a must own if you're into gaming. If gaming is one of your primary hobbies, then I'd say yes, absolutely. The PS5 is a must own. Just like Jim Ryan with his every episode, just the
Hit us with it.
just gripping those handles for dear life.
Yeah, no fingers over the triggers. You got to hold it like Jim.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he doesn't play with the triggers.
Right.
Somehow he doesn't play with the triggers. I don't know how that's possible.
Fucking psychopath.
Listen.
Is there more? Do you have more to say, Justin?
I did, but the power of Daddy Jim just came over
it
me.
Entrances you. It's like he's casting a little spell. He's like, forget.
Yeah,
and that's it.
So,
I think personally, like I think if you are a performance oriented person, I think the PS5 was from day one like a worthwhile purchase. It's just I still maintain that we don't have that game yet. Like Horizon Zero Dawn's really, really good, but it doesn't feel like that game quite yet. You know, like that big next generation thing that could only exist with the power of this machine. There are some games even that we've had already that like obviously purport to be like things like Returnal and Ratchet and Clank, which are very, very beautiful games and very, very quick loading and very responsive and very, 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 very good, very high quality. Returnal's amazing, in particular, but I don't know. Maybe our expectations are too high for this next generation feeling of an experience, because maybe the fact that we can't tell is kind of the experience. It is kind of the next gen experience, because if we played Returnal on a PS4, I mean, imagine how bad that would be. Imagine how rough those loading times would be. Imagine how despicably long it would take for Horizon to load. You know, maybe what's big and next gen about this new machine are the things that we're taking for granted. That's entirely possible. But I still personally don't feel like we have that one mind-blowing experience quite yet. But performance-wise, absolutely get this thing. Get a next-gen system in general. Like the performance boost in general across the board is just so nice. And if you're not a believer in 60 frames per second, you will be, I promise you. If you're somebody who's like, 30 frames is fine, I never had a problem, like big people, big deal. No, dude. It's there, and there's a reason people care about it. It is night and day. I know I personally, not in a million years am I plugging my PS4 in. Never again. You think I'm going to plug my PS3 in? Good luck getting me to do that. You have to pay me to do that.
Maybe you won't have to soon with Spartacus, which would be nice. Some backwards compatibility would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'll say that in a way, I always felt like PlayStation 5 was worth it. I always liked it since it came out. My whole shtick, as I think a lot of older fans will recall, is that I just felt bad that it was so scarce. I didn't feel like the scarcity met the reality, right? It wasn't, I even think Wii was a more impressive machine for the time than PS5 was in some way, because it, like, you can almost understand this social contagion of Wii taking over. It's motion, it's different. You're playing with your grandparents. PS5 was easier for us to understand, and I think it was less of a seismic shift for the way we play games. But you're right, Chris, because once you get your hands on it, it makes you, I've said on this show many times, like, I'm a total 60 frames believer now. I couldn't care less about that shit back in the day. I didn't know what the hell was running at what, but you can tell and you can see it. And I think that the PS5, I noted it last week with Horizon, it's so fast that you have to shut off load screens in Horizon manually so that they don't show up, because they don't have to. They literally make them show up so that you read the text, but they don't even have to be there. It's pretty amazing stuff. And especially as you play Horizon and use the the quick travel system, but you use the packs, so you don't have to be at the fires themselves. You can just kind of travel everywhere. It makes moving around the game laughably easy. It's awesome. And it makes me want to play Horizon on PS4 just to see what that's like, because I imagine that's a 20-second load every time you do it. And that's a big deal. I'm just hopping around without a worry in the world. So I do think PS5 is a must buy, but I do think that Chris is right, that I don't think the game is here yet where you're like, oh, wow, like, wow. Because everything that we really love about PS5 is available on PS4 with rare exception, like you said, Returnal. But even Ratchet and Clank, I thought the 2016 remake of Ratchet and Clank was better than the new one. And so I feel like if you can find one, get it. I feel like if you really wanted one by now, you'd have one. I don't know how you've gone this long without one. No excuses. No, so I'm only kidding. There's a lot of excuses. But I do feel like PS5 is where it needs to be. I think it's a wonderful machine. I think the best is yet to come. I think it's exciting that we don't really know what's coming beyond God of War and Spider-Man and Wolverine. I mean, that's 3 games, but we have this pocket of 10 games as a service coming from second party by 2026. We have a series of first party studios whom we have no idea what they're doing, including teams that we don't really they haven't really even officially acknowledged, like that Sony San Diego team that's working on stuff. So whether you think about Sucker Punch's next game, maybe Insomniac doing something not Spider-Man or Wolverine related, I would always say that's unlikely, but they surprise me over and over again. You have Bend, you have Media Molecule maybe making something, and of course London Studios hiring for something. Guerrilla has a second team. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about, and so I think it's an exciting time to be a PlayStation fan. And PS5 is awesome, and it's winning for a reason. I think it's a great machine. It's a great kit, and even the UI, which we gave so much shit to, they've refined it, and it's also something naturally that you get used to. And so, and I do want to say, because Walker brought up in his letter, the DualSense is a complete, for lack of a better term, a complete game changer. I love the DualSense controller. Just love it. Just think it's awesome. And just the haptics and the triggers, the reactive triggers, and just really nice. All right. Brenton wrote in and said, hey, CDC, just wanted to point out a Colin was right moment when it comes to Game Pass, or a type moment, he says. Like you, I was shocked to hear Square enough. I don't know what that means. Square itself, I think you meant
Square Enix.
Square Enix. Maybe that's what it was. Say Guardians didn't meet expectations. It seems like a good game with a lot of buzz, decent sales, good word of mouth. I was thinking about buying it on sale. Lo and behold, it is March's new game to come to Xbox Game Pass, saving me $30 or $40 buying it. I wonder how Square would feel knowing they lost a sale for me doing this. How many others feel this way, and how badly does this feed into I'll just wait until it's Game Pass mentality? I don't know if this is a Colin was right moment or not. I will say that Microsoft is turning into Square Enix's Western savior in a lot of different ways with Avengers, which also came to PS Now, I guess. But Avengers, this game, basically renting Crystal Dynamics to the initiative and so on and so forth. Square Enix is doing a lot of weird things. They're hedging their bets a lot and putting a lot of their Japanese stuff on PlayStation. So I don't know what their strategy is there, but I'm concerned, and Dustin, we'll go to you first on this one. I'm concerned about this Game Pass mentality. I'm going to continue to talk about it as a developer more than an enthusiast, because there's no denying that as a consumer in the here and now, that's good shit. But I'm worried about the ramifications of that mentality. We've seen it ravage other marketplaces and games, specifically, as I've said, the iPhone store, which is a fucking, the Apple store, which is a mess, just an absolute disaster. I think that's what necessitated Apple Arcade as a curation device, if anything else. And I don't want people to lose sight of the real value of intrinsic a la carte purchases of games, because I think it can mean the destruction of the games we love. So I don't know that it's Colin was right. I just think this is another example of, I don't know, I don't think it can be this good forever, I guess is what I'm saying. What do you think?
So in the example specifically with Guardians, how does Square Enix feel? How would they feel about them losing your sale? Hasn't this game been $30 to $40 like for a while now? Like, I don't think it's been heavily discounted regularly. So I'm assuming they saw the data on that and were like, well, we've already discounted it and it doesn't seem to be moving more units. So why not we just get a big old fat check from Phil Spencer and put it on Game Pass. So I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. As far as the Game Pass mentality, I think there are merits to that school of thought, but in the case with Guardians, I just don't. It's not like most games end up on Game Pass, so you should just wait. Like, it's kind of a roll of the dice. If you were thinking like, man, I want to get Guardians, but maybe I'll just wait till it's on Game Pass. I just feel like there's other games where that could be the same situation where it's like, well, I'm just gonna wait till it's on Game Pass or something like that. I mean, I've heard of people also using that same example for PS Plus. They're like, oh, that looks like a PS Plus game. Now, there's a much fewer games that end up in that pool since there's only 2 or 3 a month. But in conclusion, I think the Game Pass mentality definitely has merits, especially when you talk about comparing it to iPhone and the race to the bottom. I don't know if it fits this situation.
What do you think of this, Chris?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think there is definitely a mindset happening where, it does make more sense to pay for a service that will give you access to a bunch of titles, some of which you might not have ever thought about buying, than it is to shell out $60 on something that you're not sure about. Like, it makes a ton of sense. That would kind of impact the way people choose to spend their money. It would impact interaction habits across the board in our industry. But at the same time, I do think, Guardians of the Galaxy is a very, very, very good game. And it is a very, very, very good game that did not sell well, that was published by a big publisher. I think it doesn't really do anybody harm for those games to end up on a service like Game Pass, because Square Enix comes away with a big check. Microsoft gets a big game. A bunch of people get a game that they probably obviously did not want to spend the money on, and they get to experience it, and maybe they'll pay attention to that studio next time. Maybe they'll be open to the sequel when it's actually, or if there is a sequel. Maybe this will be like I feel like Game Pass is almost the new direct to DVD, or like the new cult classic at Blockbuster type deal, where this movie failed at the box office, but then the DVD rentals are huge. It's like when Family Guy got canceled the first time and it got brought back because everybody was renting the DVDs. Or like, I almost feel like that's possible with Game Pass, where like, oh wow, turns out a lot of people ended up playing through Guardians of the Galaxy all the way on Game Pass, and now maybe there's a decent amount of people who would be interested in a follow-up if we did it. Now, I'm not saying that they would. Publishers act as publishers do. It's not necessarily the lesson that a lot of people are going to take away from something like that, but it's possible. And I think it's an interesting avenue to consider when this is just an objective reality of the industry and how things are going. I think it's important to focus on like maybe what benefits could be seen from something like this, as opposed to, just assuming that it's just the end of days. Because I do think it's equally possible that we end up in a situation where it's Apple again and we're in a really rough spot, but we're not there yet. And Game Pass has been around for a hot minute now, and Sony shows no signs of slowing down with their single player output, and they're going to remain an embarrassing comparison point if Microsoft continues to be like, Crossfire X is fine. Like, they're not going to be able to withstand that. They need titles that can compete with that, and I don't think you get that by relying solely on an industry that's just full of shovelware. I think the existence of really exceptional software is integral to the profitability of this industry, and I don't think that goes away just because people can get fucking Hexic HD and Child of Light for free on cloud.
Sure. That's fair enough. And like I said, I'm trying to keep an open mind to it, and as a developer, we have pitched our new game to it, so we'll see what happens. Anthony C. wrote in and said, "Hey boys, recent leaks and rumors indicate that Sony may be bringing Infamous and Sly Cooper back. Do you think Sucker Punch would make these internally? And if not, who would you like to see handle them? Keep up the great work and remember to wash your balls." I will remember that. Thank you for writing in. Dustin, there are rumors. I don't really know how viable there. I haven't heard anything myself, but that doesn't mean they're not true. That Infamous and Sly Cooper may return. These are both shared universes in the sense that they both come from Sucker Punch. Now, Sucker Punch isn't going to make a Sly Cooper game or an Infamous game. I don't think again. I think it's much more likely they would make an Infamous game again, but I don't know if that's what they really want to do. However, I think that both of these franchises are incredibly tantalizing, and I think it's silly to have let Infamous die, especially as it was coming to age and maturation during the rise of the MCU and all this stuff. That they were, so not to say that it's connected, but Sony was in on the kind of superhero stuff from an early time. Infamous was greenlit before the MCU existed, and so they were there. They kind of had their own little taste and their own little flavor of a superhero comic book style series, and I thought it was stupid to let that go. And I think Sly Cooper is in a lot of ways even more appealing than Ratchet. And I like Ratchet games, I think, more, but Sly's good stuff. So do you think that these rumors are true? And who would you like to see make these games, if anyone, from the first, second, or third parties?
I think that it would make sense that Sony wants to continue to have relevant family-friendly games. I mean, right now, assumingly Ratchet is going to go on ice for a little bit. And so Sly would be a perfect contender to fill that void. As far as a studio, I almost feel like this is a situation where you get a smaller team, a relatively unknown team, which obviously is risky, but it's kind of a low risk situation as far as remaking a game like this. Like, I think of my concerns with Toy Logic working on Near Replicant, and I think that those were reasonable concerns, but it turns out a lot of times that these smaller studios, as long as they're guided properly and have some level of competence, can do a proper remaster / remake situation. So I wouldn't necessarily want to see, like, I wouldn't want to put Blue Point on a Sly Cooper remake.
Well,
That
why are
just
you
seems...
assuming that it's a remake and not a new game?
Oh, well, I guess, I don't know. Maybe I was just thinking wrong. I would assume that they would do a remaster remake first in order to bring it back. There's so many people that haven't been, they're new to gaming or whatever, like kids that have been grown up that weren't around during the PS3 era. I guess you could do a reboot style game like Ratchet and Clank instead.
Yeah, but that was a remake though of the first game. So I mean that is, I was just wondering if you were, where your mentality was on that, because I do think it goes without saying that I think let Sly Cooper itself, I don't know if it's as evident, although it is on PS4. Sly Cooper was the first game, really amongst the first games to get its own collection on PS3. So that was like that's all wrapped up. But it's incredible that Infamous and Infamous 2 are just on PS3 and there's no way to play them except for on PlayStation Now. So I do agree that any move into these universes must be preempted by at least the release of the original games on PS4 first. But after that, I would love to see new Infamous, like No Cole, someone new. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like Infamous, it's, I don't know. Do you think that, I think that Sucker Punch obviously wanted to do something different, and that's what they did Ghost of Tsushima. But I think you're right in that the last Infamous game, I know that a lot of people didn't like it as much as the first two, but I thought it was freaking awesome.
It was an amazing game to play. It just, the story was kind of weak compared to the first, because the first two games had great story, I think.
Yeah. You gotta wonder too, maybe from a Sony perspective, they're like, okay, we have a traversal focused open world game now with Spider-Man.
Yeah, superhero game. Like a real superhero.
Spider-Man is our Infamous now, which is much more valuable since it's freaking, Spider-Man. So maybe that's the angle, but I don't know. I really enjoyed that last one, so I would like to see them do something with it at some point. But again, who is the team that you have do that at the same time? It's like,
I have ideas of teams. I mean,
who are you thinking?
I think an interesting team for Sly Cooper would be Pixel Opus, if you want to look at the first party team. They're somewhat similar to Sanzaru in size and shape, and Sanzaru, of course, is owned by Facebook now, but that was the team originally that brought back Sly Cooper. as a second party game on PS3. Infamous, I think, is going to be more difficult. And this is when I think it's fun to kind of examine and explore the possibilities of Sony teaming up with some of the other third-party platform or third-party publishers out there, specifically Embracer, who own like 70 teams. I'm sure if you went through that roster of teams, you'd find the appropriate talent to put on these games. And another team I was thinking about was Other Ocean. I mean, I don't think they did a bad job with Medieval. I just don't think Medieval maybe was the game that needed to be remade in the first place. But Chris, what do you think about the possibilities of Infamous and or Sly Cooper returning after long dormancy of but neither of them have really been seen since 2014?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's exciting if that's real. I think Sony needs Sly more than they need Infamous right now. So I would be a lot more interested in seeing what they could do with Sly. I think Other Ocean's a good choice. That was the one that I had in mind because I thought they did a great job with Medieval. I just think Medieval is a PlayStation 1 game and it feels that way. You know, it's not particularly robust. It's not particularly deep. It is what it is. It's a slash 'em up platformer from the late 90s, and it's a lot of its charm is in its aesthetic and its tone and its world and its humor. But I think they did a really good job with it, and I think that level of charm could definitely assist Sly Cooper, and I think they deserve a shot at that. I would be hesitant. My first thought was Blue Point, but you don't want to. That's a lot of talent to spend on something that's a little bit old and a little unproven. You don't necessarily want to put fucking Naughty Dog on a Sly Cooper game, you know? That's not something you necessarily want. But I think Sly is the one that I'm most interested in because there's a bit of a hole in PlayStation's ecosystem when it comes to kid-friendly games. You have Ratchet, and I guess you have Astrobot kind of filling that void in now. But something a little bit darker, but still a little bit more friendly would be really cool. Something that's very, very kid-friendly, but also kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudges, like Ratchet and Clank used to do, actually. Whereas I felt this last one was very, very, very Pixar, very safe when it came to its approach of like storytelling and humor and all that. I think Sly has the potential to kind of reinvigorate that attitude, that kind of like, hey, here's something that's it's deceptively mature, and I think Other Ocean would be great.
It would be interesting to I think
ooh, how about you put Media Molecule on an actual video game?
Cool. I mean, that would
Insane.
be nice. Again, though, I think that Media Molecule they should just do something new. It's like,
yeah.
I think
agree.
Sly Cooper is really, and I've always felt this way, Sly Cooper is very charming. It's a charming character.
Yeah.
It's a different vibe. I think it's actually a bit of a younger vibe in some ways than Ratchet. And like when you think about Bentley and all the different characters. And I think those 4 Sly games are good. I was actually just looking at what I gave it an 8, Sly Cooper 4 on IGN. Not that it matters. But I remember really being into it, and it didn't do very well, but I think it came out at the wrong time. And I think you're right, Chris, that Sony is more interested in Sly than Infamous, because you guys might recall that it was back in 2017, although it never happened, I don't think, that they announced 100 episodes, right? Or something insane of a Sly Cooper cartoon. Like literally like 100 episodes or something. And they're like, yeah, it's going to be 11 minutes long each and all, and that never came to fruition. So I think that they are intrigued by the possibilities, but they might not be there yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these franchises pop back up. I think there's nothing but positives to start drawing. Let me back up. Like my nephews, I bought their PS3 for them in 2009 or 2010. They were very little. And Sly Cooper was like their introduction to, I bought them the Sly collection. And then later on, I bought them Sly 4. And that's very nostalgic for them. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people like that. So you got to just tap into that nostalgia. Like they think they're PlayStation fanboys, those kids now, because I did that to them. You know, it's great. Good stuff.
I'm looking at some of the characters from Sly Cooper. I don't have a lot of history with it. Bentley, the person you mentioned, is a crippled turtle. It's not particularly young. I'm looking at a tragic character right now.
But he's supposed. But it's cute. It's a
And he's
cute
a
sort of
burglar. He's a
wheelchair.
thief. He's a criminal. He's a scum of the earth. He's salt of the earth.
Poor Bentley. All right. Surf the Void wrote in and said, hey, Grundle Rumblers. With the news that Epic has acquired the music platform BandCamp, do you think this could have a knock-on effect for Sony and their insistence on cross-media production? With the Sony Gaming and Sony Pictures branches working so intimately, maybe this could open up the ideas of bringing Sony music into the relationship somehow. Only time will tell what Epic will do to utilize the acquisition and its effects on the industry. Keep up the great work, and don't forget that Chie is still the best girl. Thank you for writing in, Surf the Void. I don't think so, but thank you for writing in. Of course, Rize is the best girl. Now, Chris, I'm curious what you think of this. Now, my best friend Ramon is a musician and a working studio and touring musician. And he and I were going back and forth about this. People are pretty fucking upset about this in the music industry. And you have connections to that space. I'm curious what you think about this acquisition, because it seems canny in some way. Like, oh yeah, why wouldn't Epic want something like BandCamp? But they're buying things for the wrong reasons, right? Like, what did they buy? And they were like, they're just going to do Fortnite shit. What was that?
Oh my God. It was like, the guitar.
Oh yeah, right. Harmonix. And they're just going to do that shit now. It's like, okay, so is this what's going to happen with BandCamp too, where they're just going to kind of reorganize it? Because old fans of mine will remember when we launched the Game Over Greggy show before Patreon even existed, we used to sell the episodes on BandCamp. So I have a long history with that platform. It's actually a great platform, not only for musicians, but for podcasters back in the day too. I'm curious what you make of this and what you think the effects might be, considering Sony owns a minority share of Epic. Yeah,
I think this is a very bizarre move. I got an email from BandCamp because I have a BandCamp account. It's how I made a lot of my early money. Like, I used to make music and sell it on BandCamp, and it was like it was really cool. It was like a nice independent platform. It's highly customizable. You could do pretty much whatever you wanted. And I got an email from them for the first time in ages. Every now and again, I'll get like I think a couple times a day, I'll get an email from BandCamp that'll be like, someone bought your song from like 11 years ago for $1 or whatever. And it's cool, but his one email was like, we've been acquired by Epic! ! And I was like, what? What is this? I can't even fathom what the purpose would be, other than to just arbitrarily get into the music space in whatever way that they can, given that obviously they can't acquire Apple Music. Spotify is way too big for an acquisition. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's their way to weasel into a new space. I have no idea how to read the intentions of a deal like this, because it seems so disjointed. It would be like if I don't even know. It would be like if Sony bought Hallmark. Like it'd be just such a baffling move. I really don't know.
What do you think, Dustin?
So I don't know. Maybe Chris, you can fill me in a little bit about this, but
sure.
BandCamp is interesting to me just because, to my understanding, getting your music on a streaming service is not too difficult. And
no,
I understand that a lot of, especially small artists, would want to sell their albums digitally in order to make money. But when I think about it from a market perspective, like, I have zero interest in buying digital music. In fact, if there's a small independent artist that I want to support, I would rather buy a shirt or buy, if they release a vinyl, a physical product. Just like, to me, BandCamp sounds like something that would be going out of, not doing as well, just because who's buying digital music now?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe I know I get hits every so often. I have it set up so my music is on BandCamp for free, but it has options for people to just, like, if you want to spend whatever. It's like, sometimes people be like, oh, I like this a lot, I'll pay $25 for it. Sometimes people are like $5. Sometimes people are like 99 cents. And I get, I think, maybe 1 or 2 emails a day, and I have consistently for the last 10 years. So there are people out there who are buying music. That said, I've been on Spotify for a fraction of the time, and that same music is available on Spotify, and I've made way more off Spotify than I have off of Bandcamp and people purchasing music. So I don't know what the data is that informed this decision, but it is questionable because I mean I love Bandcamp. It's where I started in a lot of respects, but I mean the website's very outdated. It's a very old site, and it feels old, and it's not particularly robust. It's not particularly modern, and it's not particularly popular in the modern day. So it's just this is a really confusing purchase, and I can only assume that they have some plan for this that we're just not privy to. Because if they don't, and they're just spending to spend, this is I can't think of a worse thing to buy.
Well,
except Hallmark. That would be insane.
I need to make a mock-up of the image of a PlayStation logo and then an X and then a
Hallmark. Oh my god.
All right. Josh Ashley wrote in and said, "Hey boys, I'm a proud physical game collector from PS5 all the way back to the NES. With PS3 being pretty much the last generation to consistently have manuals in the game cases, and PS4 having barely a code slip, if anything at all, it's expected that the current and future game gens will continue this trend. Meanwhile, the plastic case sizes remain the same. Why do you guys think this is? And do you think we should ever go back to CD-sized jewel cases, or is this trick to get us environmentalists to finally go all digital?" Dustin, you're a physical game enjoyer. I'm wondering what you make of this. I'm kind of befuddled too why they haven't changed the form factor. I think it would be really cool to make very tight, small form factors that are barely thicker than the CD. So even smaller than jewel cases, but not as small as those like cheap old, DVR,
right,
or CDR cases. But I do feel like, what is even the point anymore of buying these things? Because they don't come with anything. It's just the disc. And I know that is the fundamental object, but those of us who have been around a long time remember games used to come with so much more. I remember when, even not even going back to the NES and SNES, where games did come with a shit ton of things, but going to Grand Theft Auto, like they would come with full maps that you can unravel and all of that. I just feel like I missed that, and I'm kind of curious why no publisher has tried to like totally do a different sort of thing and say like, oh, our shit comes with a 100-page manual and all this. Like, it would be cool for someone to do that, but I'm surprised that they don't, especially because I feel like the money spent, like imagine hiring a technical writer to write the strategy guide for Forbidden West, or not the strategy guide, the instruction manual for Forbidden West, and then the pennies on per product that it would cost to print that and put that in, and then the goodwill that might garner. It seems like an obvious thing.
Well, I have an answer for why that is not happening. It's because that would add more value to the physical game. And why would Sony want to add value to the physical game when they're getting 100% of the profit off of digital?
That's true, but then why? I don't know. That's true, but I feel like then why bother doing anything at all? I guess maybe doing the bare minimum.
No,
is
I agree.
Right,
like,
yeah.
No, I agree. Like, I do miss those days too. I mean, you don't even have to go that far back. Like PS3 and Xbox 360 had all sorts of fantastic user manuals. I remember Skyrim had the map, and I remember Halo 3 had like a bunch of lore in the manuals. It's a great time. And now it sucks. I really loved the jewel cases for PS1. There's something about that I kind of wish we never went to. I kind of wish we never went to DVD cases. Something, I don't know. It's just like an aesthetic preference,
right?
But I don't know. It's just it just seems like I understand why, because it just makes sense that you would want to get people in the digital door now, in this, especially now, as opposed to adding a ton of value to something that you're going to end up you're going to spend more money on the case, and then you're going to get less returns out of it. So like I can understand why you would maybe not want to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as from a preference perspective, I like the DVD sized cases because I like having the bigger artwork on the front over as opposed to a CD size case. But as far as I mean, yeah, they include as little as possible in order to encourage people to go digital. The thing that I'm always wondering, and I think that we're seeing this in the indie space particular, is that these, like, especially when you think about an indie game, it's primarily a digital product overall. But we see this rise in the physical collector's editions of, not necessarily like the $200 Elden Ring collector's edition, but something that's like, a little nicer than getting the game case. Maybe you get like the Hyroxia 2 physicals edition. They come with the soundtrack. They come with something like, all the extra little things. And I think that that's kind of a nice in between. I've always wondered, like, could there be a product, and hear me out here, like vinyl for video games? So what I mean by that is I don't buy albums digitally, as I was saying in the last question. I don't buy them digitally. I have Apple Music. I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm not going to buy a CD. But I still do, for certain albums that I really like, I enjoy owning a physical product and something to add to my collection. And so vinyl is the answer for that, where it has utility and it has the collectability and the satisfaction of actually owning a physical product. And so it's a little more difficult with games because, you don't want to, it doesn't necessarily make sense to buy a $70 game digitally and then buy it again for a physical edition. So it's like, I wonder if there could be some kind of physical product that people would want to buy in addition to a digital version or something like that. So I don't know where I'm going with this other overall, but I think physical will be around for a while. It will still continue to be niche, but I very much appreciate the smaller indie ones in particular. Like, dude, the Twin Breaker one is fucking awesome. The Hyroxian ones I have not opened because I know they're like limited. I'm like afraid to open them, but the Twin Breaker one I did, and it's very nice.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it was cool to get a couple physical games out there, specifically for Vita, which was a great honor for us. All right, finally, Tick Dickler wrote in, and you're gonna hate this intro, Chris. Itty Bitty Slitty Committee. Can you name a live service game with a positive relationship with their players? Seems to me that even the best have monetization that's viewed as exploitative to their loyal base. Is there a way Sony can do it better? Despite their reputation for quality, these games will have to make money somehow. Dustin, I'm curious what you make of this. Before I want to get to Chris to close because I want to talk about Destiny a little bit, but I'm curious what you make about this question as far as, can you think of any games that have inherently, live service games that have inherently positive relationships with their players?
I guess using the term inherently positive is difficult, just in the fact that I feel like there are some that are more fair to their players or more respecting. Like, for as much shit as we give like something like Fortnite or whatever, it's annoying, whatever. The fact that they kind of ushered in, and I'm not saying they're the first, but they were definitely the most popular, to stop it with the loot boxes. Sure, a skin will cost 10 or 15 bucks, but you know exactly what you're buying. And to me, that was a big positive of someone who was very much into Overwatch and was really annoyed that if you wanted a certain skin, you couldn't just buy it. You had to either hope to get it in a loot box or get enough currency from loot boxes in order to buy it with some obscure in-game currency. So in that sense, I feel like that's a positive way forward, no doubt. I don't know. I don't hear about people that are like, man, Fortnite is really dicking the players with this one. But I don't know. We live in a different era now of live service games, and people that play them have, I don't know if they've grown used to it or it's just the expectations have changed, but I feel like it's in a better spot now than even just a few years ago. Like I said, where loot boxes, I think, were the main thing that just felt really, really shitty from a consumer's perspective. So I think we're moving in a good direction overall.
What do you think, Chris? Because I was specifically wondering about Destiny in the sense that the more successful and the bigger a game is and the longer it runs, like Warframe is another good example. You must assume that there's some sort of good relationship here, because I just don't think you could sustain it based. It sounds silly, but just based on quality. Like, look at how people have rebelled at Red Dead Online for the lack of content. It's very good, but eventually people lose their patience and it becomes toxic. And so I assume these games that hang around for a long time must inherently have some sort of positive relationship.
Yeah, I mean, there's there really is no such thing as an inherently positive relationship, because every game is going to have some kind of whether it be like an individual or group of individuals who might feel differently about it. Like no opinion is uniform, no interpretation of reality is even 100% agreed upon. So I think there's a lot of cases to be made that, you know, definitely I think Fortnite has a really positive reputation with their audience. I think especially Destiny in recent years has been fantastic, and then there's negative aspects to it. I think a lot of the community in Destiny right now is frustrated with the state of PvP, because there just has not really been any meaningful update to it in a really long time. But overall, like, the PvE experience is fantastic, and people are really happy about it. Witch Queen is doing really, really well, and it's reviewing really, really well, and players are happy. And you look at something like Halo right now, which is a live service game, and it hasn't had an update for months. It's been like 4 months and not a single update, no roadmap. That is a fantastic video game. It's like really, really well designed. It's super fun to play, but people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. Plenty of people I know are like, what is going on? Like, by this exact time in Halo 3's life cycle, we had 3 new maps, and that wasn't a live service game. What's going on? How is this?
Game Pass.
It's a live service with no service. So that is an example of a really well-received game with a really bad reputation in a live service context. So I think there are multiple levels by which to have this conversation. But I do think, for the most part, I think Destiny is definitely up there. I do say that, admitting a bias. But from what I've seen, the community over at Bungie right now is really, really happy. And Fortnite is exploding constantly, to the point where, like, I see gameplay footage of Fortnite and I don't even recognize it anymore. People are playing Among Us in it. People are fishing. I don't know what the hell's going on. It's like Ready Player One over there right now. It's not even I don't even think a battle. Is it even a battle royale anymore? Like, I don't know. They're having Travis Scott concerts and all sorts of bullshit. It's a weird environment, but there's definitely merit to the claim that if a game's been around for a long time and it's still being played and it's still receiving really well-received content, it's a pretty good chance that the player relationship is really, really strong and really, really positive, even with the negative caveats and criticisms that you could levy against really any other type of game if you really wanted to.
Well, fair enough. Good answer. Good question. Thank you for submitting it. That's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols of PlayStation Podcast, episode 192. Dustin, do you have any closing comments?
Closing comments is that I'd like to ask the comments that don't take the 97 shirt too seriously. It's all in good fun. Next week, maybe I should show up with a 72 shirt, because that's what Shadow Warrior 3 scored, and that's one that I put on my list. So I'm not exactly too pleased about that one overall. But yeah, it's been a fantastic February. It's crazy. We still got, God of War, tons of awesome games. Overall, it's an exciting time just to be in this industry, and so I'm looking forward to it.
What about you, Chris? Any closing comments?
Oh man, I'm just thinking about Elden Ring.
Oh,
this whole time I've just been thinking about it, and I can't wait to jump into it after this. Right after I have some New York pizza for the first time in a while.
Jealous.
It's been a minute. I've been trying to be a little bit healthier with eating, because my metabolism is so fast that I don't really have a physical. It's there's very little motivation physically to eat well, but I know that my insides are like a fucking decrepit ruin. But even so, I can't stay away from a
fair
good
enough,
slice.
man. Well, enjoy, and thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and Last Stand Media. Remember to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, for early ad-free access, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, access to Sacred Symbols Plus, get your name in the credits, and more. We couldn't do it without you over there, so thank you. If you listen to us on iTunes or other podcast services, please consider leaving us a nice review there. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you watch us there instead of listening to it, although most of you do listen on audio. We appreciate the support over on YouTube as well. All right, that's all we have. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.